Chapter 300. Even if Zhu Wujiu didn't say anything about inspecting the goods, no one would ignore it. After all, it cost 10 origin power crystals. The carrier of origin power crystals was that special kind of crystal. It was a very common product with a large amount, which was why it was used as a container for origin power. Otherwise, it wouldn't be able to withstand this kind of consumption and would be used up long ago. There wouldn't be such a large amount. The size of the crystal was standard, about the size of a finger. Rather than saying it was a piece, it would be better to say it was a stick. However, even with such a small piece of yuan power crystal, it would still take a Sea of Souls realm warrior a month to fill it up, and that was the normal speed. Even if Sea of Souls realm warriors used up all of their yuan power, they would have to meditate to recover completely instead of eating pellets. Otherwise, it would be considered as a waste, since pellets were also very expensive. Even spiritual Sea realm warriors could only make 12 pieces in a year, so this thing was indeed very precious. It also showed the value of 100-year-old ginseng and Ganoderma. People paid origin power crystals one after another and got a ginseng or Ganoderma. Then, they hurriedly examined it. If they didn't understand, they asked the people beside them to help appraise it, and they all looked happy. It was indeed 100-year-old. I want to sell another one. I want to buy 3 even if I have money. After confirming that the ginseng and Ganoderma sold by Zhu Wujiu were genuine, everyone was very excited. They waved the origin power crystals and squeezed in like local tycoons. These origin power crystals were actually given to them by their families and forces for emergencies after they entered the North region. After all, origin power crystals were popular there, and gold and silver were only circulated among ordinary people. In the 9 nations of the desolate North, the spiritual ocean tier was the absolute mainstay, so how could they condense origin power crystals all day long? Therefore, even the great clans like the 8 great clans couldn't take out many origin power crystals, let alone normal clans. Thus, these guys threw out dozens of origin power crystals at once. They were really rich and willful. Guang Yuan shook his head and said, "If any guy dares to squander my origin power crystals like this, I will definitely kill him with my own hands." Ling Han sighed. "You speak as if you've refined origin power crystals before." "Pa, I don't even have enough time to cultivate. How could I possibly waste my essence energy on something like that?" Guang Yuan immediately spat out, completely disregarding his image. True, Ling Han was now an Earth-grade alchemist, and Guang Yuan's status was who knew how much lower than his. Thus, he naturally acted like a ruffian, and did not need to put on the airs of a powerful cultivator. Everyone chuckled. Although Guang Yuan was rough, he was also an interesting person. The crowd crowded around Zhu Wujiu, and the scene was extremely lively. Some of them didn't even have 10 pieces of origin crystals on them, so they tried to bargain with Zhu Wujiu. Some of them were richer and more overbearing, fearing that the ginseng and Ganoderma would be sold out, so they said they were willing to increase the price and sell the ginseng to him first. Cheng Fei Jun's expression became darker and darker. The purpose of him organizing the martial art tea party was to pick out outstanding talents with potential for Luo Ji Feng to choose from. It was not for Ling Han to sell his wares. He couldn't help but stand up, reminding everyone that it was almost time for the sparring to continue. But no one paid any attention to him. Because there could only be one first place in the martial art tea party, and there was only one prize. Having seen the skills of the others just now, he knew that there were only a few who could compete for the first place, and he was not fated to win. Since that was the case, why not focus on the treasures that could be seen? Cheng Fei Jun almost cursed out loud. This tea party was hosted by him, and he was a black-grade high-level alchemist. A bunch of mere gushing spring-tier martial artists actually dared to not give him face. But with Ling Han present, he, a black-grade high-level alchemist, was really nothing much. So what if they didn't give him face? Wasn't there still Grandmaster Ling? This damned Ling Han, was he born to go against him? Cheng Fei-jun sat down again, his eyes filled with fury, and he hated Luo Ji-feng even more. This old guy said he wanted to get rid of Ling Han, but why hadn't there been any movement for a few days, allowing Ling Han to run around without rhyme or reason? After another hour or so, Zhu Wujiu finally sold out the basket of spirit medicine, but there were still many people waving their origin power crystals, wanting to spend. He walked towards Ling Han, and when he saw Ling Han nod, he said, "Friends who didn't manage to buy anything, don't worry. Later, you can come to the Pleasant Arrival Tavern's 7th courtyard to find me. There's also a large supply of ginseng and ganoderma that are also 100 years old. I guarantee that everyone will be satisfied." With these words, only those who didn't manage to buy anything were willing to leave. But everyone was shocked. They had already sold out a basket of spirit medicine, and there was actually still more. It had to be known that these weren't cabbages that could be bought as many as one wanted, but were 100-year-old ginseng and ganoderma. An ordinary person's lifespan was only a mere 100 years. Now, the deep mountains were filled with herb gatherers, and spirit medicine was becoming fewer and fewer. Occasionally picking 100-year-old ginseng was enough to burn incense, and now they were actually selling it in baskets, and there was still more. Could it be that they had dug out an ancient herb garden? Cheng Fei-jun's expression was similarly gloomy, and there was even stronger greed. He also thought that Ling Han had obtained an ancient herb garden, and it was left behind by an alchemy grandmaster, which was why Ling Han had obtained the inheritance and become an earth-grade alchemist at such a young age. If he could obtain it, instantly, his heart became fiery, and an endless desire was born, causing him to not hesitate to do some risky things out of desperation. "Ling Han, that brat's killing intent has been aroused," Guang Yuan said to Ling Han. Ling Han smiled lightly, and said, "No matter, he's just a jumping clown. Originally, I didn't care, but since he wants to seek death, then I'll send him on his way. I'll leave this task to Big Brother Guang." "Pooh," Guang Yuan instantly spurted out, and faintly said, "That guy is a black-grade high-level alchemist, and if I kill him, then all the alchemists in the world will see me as a thorn in their side. Make it clean. He's only in the 7th layer of the gushing spring tier, and with Big Brother Guang's cultivation that's almost at the 8th layer of the spiritual ocean tier, you'll definitely be able to suppress him with one hand, absolutely without anyone noticing," Ling Han said with a smile. Guang Yuan obtained the complete large Sun Heaven Heart scripture, and with Ling Han's supply of alchemical pills, his cultivation experienced a small explosion, and he already reached the peak stage of the 7th layer of the spiritual ocean tier, which even he himself didn't dare to believe. "All right, give this guy to me," Guang Yuan said through gritted teeth. He had received so many benefits from Ling Han, yet he had never truly put in any effort for Ling Han, so he felt really apologetic in his heart. Ling Han nodded. He really didn't take Cheng Fei-jun to heart, but that Luo Ji-feng, because he almost blinded him, he never went to steal from him again, so he didn't have a deep understanding of this person. The old guy's aura gave him a feeling of déjà vu, but he couldn't remember what it was. Chapter 301. The ginseng sale came to an end, and the martial art tea party naturally continued. However, quite a few people were thinking about the 100-year-old ginseng and ganoderma, so they naturally appeared dispirited, causing the excitement on the scene to weaken greatly. Fortunately, Lian Xiaozhu, Bai Yu Quan, and the others once again went up to exchange pointers. Their spectacular performance redeemed quite a bit, winning frequent cheers from the crowd. Especially the martial artists from their own country, when their own country's geniuses showed their prowess and defeated the experts of other countries, they were all extremely excited. In the end, with nations as a unit, a total of 8 strongest emerged. They were Lian Xiaozhu, Hua Gaoyi, Bai Yu Quan, Yu Xinghua, Zhong Higuang, Chu Shuai, Yuan Lianshan, and Ken Yi. Zhu Wujiu was a bit inexperienced, after all, and only had the cultivation of the 5th layer of the gushing spring tier. Moreover, he could only rely on the silver moon body, and his own talent in martial art was barely passable. Now, He'd only formed 2 flashes of sword chi, still a distance away from the title of young king. In the 9 nations of the desolate north, each nation had one. Only Yun Nation didn't have a single genius selected, which made all the martial artists of Yun Nation blush. However, what could they do if their skills were inferior? Martial arts spoke with strength. Ling Han, if you go up, you can fight all 8 of them by yourself, Lu Yutong said, very displeased. The first in the desolate north should be her lover no matter what. That's right. On this point, Li Si-chan naturally stood in the same trench as Lu Yutong. Hu Niu patted her chest, and said, Niu will fight for Ling Han and take first place. As she spoke, she was about to jump down from the stage, scaring Can Yi so much that his face instantly paled. He'd suffered at the hands of the little girl, and that speed was unfathomable for gushing spring-tier martial artists. Unexpectedly, even Yen Tianzhao suffered a great loss, and had no choice but to unleash a powerful move, using strange silk threads to trap the little girl, and only then did he win. This could also be said to be because the little girl had not been on guard. Moreover, Hu Niu's strength had obviously increased after this, and now she was already in the 5th layer of gushing spring tier. If they were to fight again, it would be hard to say who would win. No matter if it was Ling Han or Hu Niu, as long as these 2 monsters entered the field, they would definitely be invincible in gushing spring tier. Even low-level spiritual ocean tier martial artists could only be swept aside by them. Ling Han laughed heartily and said, Niu Niu, don't scare little Ye. Can't you see that his face is pale? When everyone heard this, it was true, and they couldn't help but laugh, because it was really rare to see Can Yi lose his composure like this. This youngster had always been cold and detached. Who asked Hu Niu to be small and act without any scruples? Even Can Yi would have a headache if he saw her. Cheng Fei Jun invited Can Yi and the rest of the 8 up, and arranged their respective opponents. It just so happened that 8 would advance to 4, 4 would advance to 2, and finally, the strongest would be decided, successfully concluding today's martial art tea party. The first must be our Fire Nation's Lian Shuzhu. Bullshit. In front of our Stone Kingdom's Hua Gaoi, everything else is trash. Go, go, go. Our Wind Nation's Bai Yu Quan is here, who's his match? The original individual honor had already risen to the national level, and everyone was cheering for their country's victorious prodigy. Only the Cloud Nation didn't have anyone fighting their way out, which made everyone's expressions unsightly. Lu Yutong and Li Si-chan were also very displeased. The one in the limelight should have been Ling Han. Once he came out, who could be his match? The 4 matches of the 8-4 should have been carried out one by one, but who asked Zhu Wujiu to call out midway, delaying a lot of time? Now, only 4 matches were carried out together. Ping, ping, pang, pang, the 8 people divided into 4 groups to fight. The scene was extremely intense, and instantly attracted everyone's attention. From time to time, people would exclaim in surprise and cheer for their performance. It really wasn't a wasted trip. Being able to watch such an exciting match also made many arrogant and complacent youngsters put away their arrogance. It turned out that not only did their own country have a genius that they could only look up to, other countries also had one. Ha 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 ha, the mongrels of the desolate north actually dared to hold some martial art tea party and talk nonsense about martial art. What a joke. An ear-piercing voice rang out, and a white-clothed youngster walked over with large strides, a disdainful expression on his face. Who is it? Everyone turned their heads, and even Can Yi and the others stopped fighting. This person spoke of the desolate north, striking down all the people of the 9 nations. The white-clothed youngster was very handsome, and the expression on his face was also very arrogant, giving people the urge to raise their fists and punch him. He was extremely good at drawing hatred. There was a sword hanging on both of his waists. Usually, they were dual swords, which was rather rare. He walked over with large strides, and said, "Monkeys of the desolate north, go back to where you came from. The north region isn't a place you can go. Who are you? Is it any of your business?" Someone shouted. The white-clothed youngster smiled proudly, and said, I forgot to introduce myself. AI, announcing my name in front of you mongrels is practically an insult to me, Bao Xin ran. Forget it, I won't announce my name. Pooh, many people instantly laughed out loud. You said you wouldn't announce your name, but you already did. Was your intelligence worrying? The one with the surname Bao, get lost. Someone humphed. From this Bao Xin Ran's tone, he should be from a force of the North region, and to the desolate North, the North region was the true holy land of martial art. Thus, even if Bao Xin Ran had spoken rudely first, everyone still chose to tolerate him. Bao Xin Ran picked his ears, and said, Who was the one who told me to get lost just now? Get out here and let me have my way, and I'll break all your teeth. So what if I said it? A tall and sturdy youngster stood out. He had the back of a tiger and the waist of a bear, and his height was close to 2 meters. His skin was dark, and he looked like a violent bear. Pang! Everyone's eyes blurred, and they saw that Bao Xin Ran had already disappeared from his original spot. His fist smashed onto that violent bear's face, directly sending that person flying. That tall and sturdy youngster still wanted to stand up, but when he was halfway up, his entire head actually exploded, and his headless body instantly collapsed onto the ground, blood splattering all over the ground. For a moment, there was absolute silence. But after a mere instant, the crowd became enraged, and all wanted to swallow this Bao Xin Ran alive. You're strong, so if you win, then so be it, why do you have to be so lethal? I was a bit too heavy-handed. I originally only wanted to knock out a mouthful of teeth. But forget it, those who insulted me deserve to die, Bao Xin Ran said calmly, and then picked his ears with his fingers. Bao Xin Ran said calmly, then dug his ear with his finger. Is there any other trash who wants to make a move? Everyone was silent. Although that person just now was only in the poly tier, Bao Xin Ran's sudden attack was incredibly shocking, causing most gushing spring tier martial artists to be unable to capture its trajectory. If they were to really face him head-on, it would probably be a disaster. Moreover, this person's attack was so ruthless, so in a situation where there was no chance of victory, there was really no one who dared to rashly come down and fight with him. Brother Bao, let me come down to experience your strength. Zhong Higuang strode down the stage. Oh, it's just the 8 of you competing for the title of the strongest prodigy of the younger generation. I'm going to die of laughter. You're just a few mongrels, and you actually have the delusion of claiming to be number 1. You really don't know what you're talking about. Bao Xin Ran sneered, and mocked without holding back. Sir, have you had enough? Zhong Higuang was also furious, and removed the whip that was coiled around his waist. Bao Xin Ran picked his ear, then blew on his finger, and said, How about this, I'll use 1 finger, and if I can't kill you within 3 moves, I'll kneel on the ground and call you grandfather. Arrogant, he was really too arrogant. He wanted to fight against one of the 8 great prodigies of the desolate North with 1 finger, and kill him within 3 moves. He was really looking down on others. Putting aside whether he could win or not, to kill at every turn, he was really looking down on the 9 nations of the desolate North, wasn't he? Chapter 302. Brother Zhong, kill him. Yes, kill him. We, the 9 nations of the desolate North, are not to be trifled with. The crowd became enraged, but Cheng Fei Jun was silent. He recognized the symbol on Bao Xin Ran's sleeves. This was a disciple of a large sect, so it was not worthwhile for him to offend him. Anyway, it was just Zhong Higuang, so if he died, then so be it. There were still many geniuses here, so 1 less wouldn't matter. Ling Han frowned, and said, Zhong Higuang is in trouble. Why? Lu Yutong and Li Xichan both asked in shock. Because that brat is in the spiritual ocean tier, and in the 5th layer of the spiritual ocean tier. Guang Yuan continued. What? Lu Yutong and Li Si-chan both revealed shocked expressions. A 20-something spiritual ocean tier martial artist. What a joke, it was impossible to find one in Rain Country. There indeed appeared recently, and Feng Yan was one. And Yan Tian Zhao was even younger, only 15 years old. But normally, one had to be over 30 to cross into the spiritual ocean tier. Even reaching the gushing spring tier at 30 years old was already quite good. Could it be that the people of the North region were all so powerful that any random person that came out was a martial art genius? Then this fight cannot be fought. Zhu Wujiu stood up abruptly. This was an absolutely unfair fight. Ling Han nodded, and said, "Go stop it, and can you come back?" "Yes." Zhu Wujiu hurriedly received the order and left, but it was already too late. Zhong Higuang was already unable to restrain his anger, and with a wave of his whip, he lashed out at Bao Xi and ran. Shua, the long whip turned into a spirit snake, and as origin power surged, layers of ripples appeared in the air, extremely shocking. Bao Xian Ren only smiled coldly, and with a point of his left little finger, he pointed at the middle of the long whip with incredible accuracy. An even stronger wave of origin power struck, and the long whip instantly seemed to be hit where it hurt, immediately softening. Zhong Higuang was shocked, and was just about to wave his whip to regroup, but Bao Xian Ren had already flown out. His speed was extremely fast. With a single move of his feet, he had already appeared in front of Zhong Higuang and grinned. Zhong Higuang was extremely panic-stricken, and was about to abandon his whip to attack when Bao Xian Ren flicked a finger at his forehead. With a paw, his entire body was instantly sent flying, and when he was in midair, his head suddenly exploded, red and white matter splattering everywhere. Everyone trembled in fear. That was one of the strongest geniuses in the 9 nations of the desolate north, yet he was killed like a dog. How could they accept this? Could it be that the North region was filled with this kind of monsters? Then why the hell would they go to the Winter Moon sect? They would definitely have to experience fierce competition to enter the sect, and they would all die from a casual attack. They had come out to pursue a higher realm of martial art, not to die. For a time, many people had the thought of retreating. Don't you guys think that a person's head is the most beautiful when it explodes? Bao Xian Ren said with a hint of intoxication, then his voice became cold, and he said, "You really surprise me. You dogs of the desolate north can actually be so beautiful when you die. Truly inconceivable." This was not praise. Everyone was furious, but when they thought of the others' terrifying strength, none of them dared to speak out loud. "You're not in the gushing spring tier," Chu Shui said. Zhong Higuang was in the 9th spring of the gushing spring tier, and no gushing spring tier warrior could kill him in 2 moves. Only spiritual ocean tier warriors had such qualifications. Bao Xian Ren began clapping his hands, and said with a smile, "Finally, there's a smart person. I obviously can't be in the gushing spring tier. A genius like me is already 25 years old, how could I still be trash in the gushing spring tier?" Spiritual ocean tier, everyone exclaimed in shock, and at the same time became extremely furious. You, an elite of the spiritual ocean tier, came to torment and kill a gushing spring tier warrior, what did this mean? Bao Xian Ren stepped down, and a pattern opened up, forming a light green symbol. Releasing the will of martial art was the sign of the spiritual ocean tier. "Sir, you've gone too far. You're a dignified spiritual ocean tier warrior, yet you hide your cultivation level and kill people at every turn. Don't you think you've gone too far?" Bai Yuquan said in a powerful and resonant voice. Well said, well said. Everyone cheered for him. Even a spiritual ocean tier warrior couldn't bully others like this, not to mention it wasn't as if there were no spiritual ocean tier warriors in the 9 nations of the desolate north. Bao Xian Ren picked his ears, and said, "What do you mean by going too far? I'm about the same age as you guys, and my cultivation level is higher than yours, and my strength is stronger than yours. This is because my talent is higher, and you guys are just trash. As trash, you should be prepared to be stepped on by me. Too despicable. Let's attack together. At most, a few dozen of us will die, but we have to kill him no matter what. That's right, we, the 9 nations of the desolate north, are not to be trifled with. Bao Xian Ran's provocation finally caused everyone to successfully suppress their fear, and only endless fury remained. They had to kill this arrogant guy no matter what to vent their anger. Oh, kill me. Bao Xian Ran sneered, raised his left hand high up, and circled around everyone. He said, "Trash, have you noticed this symbol? This is the Cold Water Sect's armband, and I am a disciple of the Cold Water Sect. Putting aside whether you guys can kill me or not, even if you can, not only will you guys die, the clans behind you will die, and your country will also be destroyed. Because I am a disciple of the Cold Water Sect. Do you understand, you trash?" Bao Xian Ran proudly put down his left hand. Now, is there any trash that refuses to accept this? For a moment, the crowd fell silent once again. A spiritual ocean tier warrior was obviously nothing much. United as one, they could fight to the death no matter what. However, the Cold Water Sect could be called a sect, and they had at least a spiritual infant tier elite overseeing it. That was an unimaginable power. No matter how hot-blooded one was, they still had to consider the clans behind them and their country. Attracting a colossus like the Cold Water Sect, what kind of disaster was that? Now, all of you scram back to your kennels. Whoever dares to leave the Fallen Moon Gorge, I'll behead him. Bao Xian Ran said coldly. This time, everyone finally knew that he was purposely here to stop them from entering the North region. At this critical juncture, there were only 2 possibilities. The first was that Bao Xian Ran didn't want them to participate in tomorrow's auction, and the second was that he didn't want them to participate in the Winter Moon Sect's entrance examination. Or both were possible. What are you still hesitating for? Bao Xian Ran glared. His own strength was enough to crush them, and added with the colossus that was the Cold Water Sect standing behind him, he naturally had the confidence to be arrogant. Damn it! Everyone clenched their fists tightly, so much so that their bones made cracking sounds. Could it be that so many of them could only return home with their tails between their legs because of a young man? That's right, I seem to have heard just now that there were many 100-year-old Ginseng and Lingji here. Bao Xian Ran revealed a smile, greed flashing past his eyes. Before you leave the Ginseng, Lingji, and Origin Power crystals behind. If anyone dares to hide them, kill without mercy. The crowd was in an uproar. Chapter 303. Ling Han's eyes narrowed. The technique that the young man used just now was precisely Mysterious 3000. However, the young man advanced into the Flower Blossom tier, so a casual attack had supreme power, instantly killing 2 elites in the 9th layer of the Spiritual Pedestal tier. Thus, just from this attack, it was completely impossible to judge the young man's attainments in Mysterious 3000, which was also the best representation of a swordsman's strength on the path of the sword. Mysterious 3000 was propelled by sword chi, and the more sword chi cultivated, the more sword lights shot out, and the greater the power. In the sky, the young man said indifferently, "Now, has anyone answered my question?" I'll speak. Fairy Zhu should have gone deep into the forest, firstly to search for crimson-red chilling ice grass, and secondly to fight for the heavenly luck stone, someone hurriedly said in a trembling voice. The young man revealed a smile, and said, "Heavenly luck stone." Xian Er is still in the spiritual pedestal tier, so if she refined a piece of heavenly luck stone and broke through to the flower blossom tier in the future, it would be greatly beneficial to her. He paused, and then said, "Ji Ming, do you think that if I took the heavenly luck stone and gave it to Xian Er, would she be very happy?" Tong Ji Ming revealed an envious expression. Heavenly luck stone was the most precious treasure for martial artists under the flower blossom tier. He was now in the 9th layer of the spiritual pedestal tier, and if he could fuse with a piece of heavenly luck stone, TSK. However, he immediately put away this envy, and said respectfully, Fairy Zhu would definitely be extremely happy. Ha 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 ha. The young man laughed loudly. Alright, then I'll make an exception and play with the people here. After he finished speaking, he turned around and left. With each step, he drew a sword diagram, dazzling like flowers. Tong Jiming sneered at everyone and hurriedly followed. Although he couldn't fly, the speed of a spiritual pedestal tier elite wasn't slow either. He continuously passed through the treetops, chasing after the young man. Only now did everyone let out a sigh of relief. Many people even sat on the ground, drenched in sweat. However, not everyone was so shocked by the young man that they lost their fighting spirit. Shen Zhongcheng's eyes were fixed on the place where the young man disappeared, his right hand tightly gripping his sword, exuding endless fighting spirit. Ling Han was no exception, fighting spirit burning in his heart. This young man was probably comparable to the Sword Emperor back then. Regrettably, in his last life, he focused on alchemy and only pursued tier in martial arts, so he didn't compete with the 6 heaven tier emperors. But in this life, his regrets could be made up for. That young man's talent and comprehension of sword arts were both extremely shocking, just like the second Sword Emperor. Competing with such a prodigy, Ling Han was full of fighting spirit. I know who that person is. Someone suddenly exclaimed. I've heard before that when an elite from the Heaven Sword sect came to the North region to travel, he fell in love with Fairy Zhu at first sight, and had the intention of inviting her to the Heaven Sword sect. It's this person. The second sword in the world, Yao Huiyu. As soon as the words were spoken, cries of surprise were instantly heard. What kind of person was this, actually daring to claim to be the second sword in the world, not afraid of losing his tongue? Yao Huiyu's strength was indeed very strong. Flower blossom tier cultivators at his age were practically invincible, so to claim the second in the world was really shameless. How many swordsmen were there in the world? Could it be that soul tier and deity transformation tier swordsmen were inferior to him? I heard that Yao Huiyu originally wanted to claim the title of the best sword in the world, but in order to express his respect to those old seniors of the Heaven Sword sect, he retreated to the title of second. The second in the world, that's too modest. However, he's already in the flower blossom tier in his 20s. In his age group, the second in the world should be fully deserving of the title. Heavens, is there really such a huge gap between the level of martial arts in our North region and the Middle State? It's said that the Middle State is the holy land of martial arts, and it's indeed true. Everyone sighed ruefully. In the past, they were foolish and arrogant, but when they saw true elites and geniuses, only then did they realize that the world was far larger than they imagined. However, the 2 9th-layer spiritual pedestal tier elites were killed, and this stronghold was no longer safe. Encountering an attack from a spiritual pedestal tier demonic beast, it was extremely possible that it would be instantly destroyed. Thus, everyone set out on their way, either to continue gathering herbs and hunting demonic beasts, or to head to other strongholds. Ling Han also set out towards the core area of the forest. He couldn't help but sigh ruefully. Previously, he felt that his cultivation was already fast enough, but compared to Yao Huiyu, although his speed wasn't considered slow, it couldn't be said to be much faster. After all, a great sect with 10,000 years of history like the Heaven Sword sect had abundant cultivation resources that normal forces couldn't compare to. Concentrating them on a few genius disciples, then the cultivation of Yao Huiyu and the others naturally wouldn't be slower than Ling Han's. However, after breaking through to the flower blossom tier, there were pitifully few spirit medicines of level 6 and above. Even an ancient great sect like the Heaven Sword sect would feel that they were poor, and in terms of the cultivation of their disciples, they couldn't be faster. And Ling Han didn't need to feel inferior. How long had it been since he started cultivating? It was only a little over a year, and he had already soared from the 2nd layer of body refining tier to the 4th layer of the spiritual ocean tier. How could this kind of cultivation speed compare to Yao Huiyu's in the past? After all, he never needed to worry about comprehension of cultivation level. However, now that Yao Huiyi, Ao Feng, and the others have appeared, the difficulty of me wanting to obtain the crimson red chilling ice grass and the heavenly luck stone has increased considerably. Ling Han stroked his chin. He was determined to obtain these two things, but from now on, there were many difficulties. Ling Han. Hunyo suddenly ran towards a certain direction. Ling Han followed, and saw that Hunyo had stopped beside a plant. This plant was completely crimson red, as if it was burning. Fiery sun grass. Ling Han was astounded. He really didn't mean to. This time, he didn't come to the dark devil forest for the fiery sun grass, but he actually bumped into it while walking. What kind of luck was this? No, it wasn't that his luck was good, but rather that Hunyo seemed to have the ability to find medicinal ingredients. This wasn't bad, and his chances of obtaining the crimson red chilling ice grass increased slightly. As long as he succeeded first, then he could directly hide in the Black Tower. Who cared how many sword strikes you had in the world? Nothing would be of any use. Since he had encountered it, there was naturally no reason for him to miss it. Ling Han dug up the fiery sun grass with its roots, planning to transplant it into the Black Tower. This kind of spirit medicine needed to grow for 100 years before it would blossom and bear seeds, but in the Black Tower, this process could be completed in a month. Thus, he plucked a stalk of fiery sun grass, which meant that in a few months' time, this kind of spirit medicine would be as plentiful as cabbages. If I really have to return to the Winter Moon sect, I'll be able to report back, Ling Han said with a smile, but his entire body immediately stood on end, feeling a strong sense of danger. As expected of the person who destroyed my Sea Breeze City's stronghold, his senses are really shockingly sharp. An aged voice was heard from behind him. It was like the sound of metal rubbing against each other, making one feel so uncomfortable that they wanted to cover their ears. Ling Han slowly turned around, only to see a skinny old man standing soundlessly behind him. He held a red walking stick in his hand, and his waist was bent, looking very old. Elder Jiu Yun, right? He revealed a smile. Do you flower blossom tier warriors all have the habit of acting like ghosts? Appearing behind others without a sound, aren't you afraid of scaring them? Chapter 304. What a powerful move. It instantly restrained the two of them. Everyone was originally cheering, but when they saw this scene, all of them felt despair. Bao Xian Ran was already powerful enough, but now he actually had an even more powerful spiritual tool in his hands. Who else could be a match for this flag? It was obvious that this was a spiritual tool. Once the will of martial art was awakened, the chill would be sealed in ice. Who would be able to get close? It was said that the sect guarding treasure of the Cold Water School was called the Cold Water Flag. Once it was activated, it would truly seal 1,000 kilometers in ice. It was extremely terrifying. This flag was only an imitation, so its might was far from being able to compare with the real Cold Water Flag. Was it still not enough to suppress two gushing spring-tier martial artists? Bao Xian Ran made a pei sound. A little girl actually needed him to sacrifice a command flag in order to subdue her. It was really quite embarrassing. Cheng Fei Jun, on the other hand, revealed a cold smile. He had initially wanted to rely on Luo Jifeng to finish off Ling Han, but the other party had actually not succeeded even after so many days. This caused him to silently curse Luo Jifeng as useless. But now, Bao Xian Ran was actually going to help him fulfill his wish, causing him to want to run over and hug Bao Xian Ran, giving him a fierce kiss. What a good person. Ka. At this moment, a change occurred. A large number of spiderweb-like cracks appeared on the layer of ice surrounding Ling Han. It could be seen that there was a ball of scarlet flames circulating around his body, and it had already melted a hole in the ice. Deviant flame Cheng Fei Jun's eyes immediately turned red. He had possessed a strange flame before, so even though he was so far away, he could feel that the strange flame had a trace of familiarity, yet it was also completely different. His own deviant flame had already been devoured by Ling Han's deviant flame. It was obvious that this strange flame was more powerful. It was inevitable that two strange flames had fused together. I want. Cheng Fei Jun shouted in his heart. To be able to melt even the ice seal of the command flag, the power of the strange flame was truly astonishing. And the sound of ka 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 did not come from Ling Han's layer of ice, but from Hunyou's. The little girl's mouth was wide open as she chewed continuously, crushing the ice and swallowing it at an incredible speed. In just a short while, her little head had already popped out, and the rest of her body was also rapidly liberating. Damn, what kind of foodie is this? He can even eat this kind of ice seal. Bao Xan Ran's face twitched. These two fuck you monsters, especially Hunyou, what kind of teeth did she have? His killing intent immediately surged, and his eyes locked onto Hunyou. Now that she had not escaped, he could very easily kill her. Clang, the two swords at his waist were unsheathed, cold as water. Hey, have you forgotten that you still have me? Ling Han smiled faintly. Trash in the first layer of the gushing spring tier, I'll kill you first, then kill this little girl. Bao Xian Ran's figure flew like the wind, charging towards Ling Han. His two swords slashed together, and hung, the will of martial art circulated, and the sky was filled with ice and snow. This was not an illusion, but real ice and snow. After reaching the Sea of Soul's realm, the will of martial art could be released, which could affect heaven and earth and form physical attacks. On every piece of ice and snow, there was a small glowing vein-like pattern that possessed terrifying destructive power. Bao Xian Ran had previously underestimated Ling Han, who was able to easily escape from the ice seal of the flag. This was worthy of him killing. Ling Han drew his sword and activated the Four Seasons sword technique. The concepts of spring, summer, autumn, and winter circulated, forming a cycle of heaven and earth. Bao Xian Ran's attack contained the will of martial art, so it was obviously stronger, but Ling Han's power was not much weaker, and added with the fact that the Four Seasons sword technique was a black-grade high-level martial arts technique, its power was extraordinarily great, and it very well compensated for the lack of will of martial art. Hung, the two of them continued to exchange blows, and for a moment, it was hard to determine who had the upper hand. Quick, pinch me, am I dreaming? Why is it that a guy in the first layer of the gushing spring tier is exchanging blows with a spiritual ocean tier warrior? Someone mumbled. My eyes must be blurred, haha, how is this possible? Damn, I'm going crazy, is this really gushing spring tier? Seeing this scene, aside from the martial artists of Rain Country, the others all cried out as if they had gone mad, holding their heads in their hands. This was too surreal. A mere martial artist in the first layer of the gushing spring tier could actually fight a spiritual ocean tier warrior head-on and not be at a disadvantage. It was practically a dream. Although Hunyou was also in the gushing spring tier, at least she didn't fight Bao Xian Ran head-on and won with speed, which was at least acceptable. But Ling Han definitely had the aura of the first layer of the gushing spring tier, yet he could fight a martial artist in the fifth layer of the spiritual ocean tier head-on, practically blinding their dog eyes. A gushing spring tier could be this strong. Not only Ling Han, but also Hunyou. The two of them did not fall into a disadvantage when fighting against Bao Xian Ran, perfectly illustrating what was called a monster, what was called a freak. You guys still don't know, right? He's Ling Han, someone from Rain Country said. What? He's Grandmaster Ling, an Earth-grade alchemist. That's right. How is this possible? He was only 16 or 17 years old when he went up. I'm really going crazy. A 16 or 17-year-old youngster can not only fight a spiritual ocean tier warrior head-on, but is also an Earth-grade alchemist. I've always been called a genius, but compared to him, I seem like an idiot. I'm also an idiot. We're both idiots. Everyone sighed. At first, they had thought very highly of themselves, always feeling that they were among the best of the younger generation, but only now did they realize how narrow-minded and arrogant they had been. On the other side, Hunyo had naturally bitten out of the ice seal, but seeing that Ling Han and Bao Xian Ran were fighting fiercely, she did not rush up to fight. She had a strong sensitivity towards battles, and knew that Ling Han had not fully displayed his strength. He could definitely win, so naturally, she did not interfere. Bao Xian Ran was shocked. He was a genuine martial artist in the 5th layer of the spiritual ocean tier, and his opponent was a genuine martial artist in the 1st layer of the gushing spring tier, but his battle prowess was not the slightest bit inferior to his, so how could he accept this? If his opponent also reached the spiritual ocean tier, then wouldn't he be able to instantly kill him with a single move? No, he definitely could not allow this kind of genius to continue living. He leaped up, intending to activate the flag and seal Ling Han in ice, then easily kill him. You want a second time? Ling Han smirked coldly. The mysterious 3000 was already ready to be used, and this powerful move only needed the time of 2 or 3 breaths to be prepared. Very quickly. One of Bao Xian Ran's hands had already touched the flag. He was going to pull out the flag and use it as a weapon to sweep at Ling Han. If he was swept by it, Ling Han would first be sealed in ice, then be forcibly shattered by the tyrannical power. Then he would naturally be thoroughly dead. Hong, 4 flashes of sword light lit up at the same time. One was a real sword, and the other 3 were sword chi. Then, they formed a total of 400 flashes of sword light that shot towards Bao Xian Ran. Bao Xian Ran's eyes emitted extreme shock and terror, and he hurriedly waved the flag to parry. Pu, 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 sword light scattered, shaking the heavens and earth. Bao Xian Ran staggered backwards, his body covered in wounds, many of which were deep to the bone, revealing the ghastly white bones. His entire person was completely unrecognizable. However, to be able to withstand the mysterious 3000 and not die, he could be considered to have some ability. The battle flag blocked most of the attack, or else he would still have died. Phone reading was more refreshing. Chapter 305. This was too much. Not only did he chase them back to the desolate north, he even wanted to rob them. Grandmaster Cheng, aren't you going to say a few words? Someone asked Cheng Fei Jun. He was the organizer of this martial art tea party. Now that something like this happened, was the host going to keep sitting? Being pointed at like this, Cheng Fei Jun could only stand up and say, Bao Xian Ran, this is the Falling Moon Gorge, the territory of my Star Brilliance Palace Hall. Is it really good for you to come here and show off? Huh, a black-grade high-level alchemist. Bao Xian Ran's gaze swept over, and he couldn't help but pick his ear. You can't be a fake, right? You're only a few years older than me, how did you become a black-grade high-level alchemist? There were 3 silver badges hanging on the other's chest, so he naturally wouldn't be ignorant. Cheng Fei Jun's expression instantly darkened. Was everyone looking down on him now? He snorted, and said, I'm Cheng Fei Jun, leave this town immediately, or else the Star Defense Force will expel you. Hearing this, everyone felt vexed. They were being stepped on, yet they could only ask the other to leave. How hateful. Is that so? Bao Xian Ran smiled faintly, and casually took out a small flag, sticking it into the ground. Xiao, this flag actually grew with the wind, turning into a large flag that was at least 10 meters tall. A river was drawn on the flag, and it was surrounded by pure white snow. Just a glance was enough to make one's whole body shiver, as if they'd entered a world of ice and snow. No, this wasn't a feeling, it was really so. One could clearly feel that the surrounding temperature had sharply dropped, and it was continuously dropping. The flag of the cold water sect. Cheng Fei Jun exclaimed, his expression extremely ugly. Bao Xian Ran laughed, and said, that's right, my sect wants to borrow this place to do something. I hope Grandmaster Cheng will give me some face, or else, don't blame my sect for not giving you face. Cheng Fei Jun's chest rose and fell rapidly, showing the struggle in his heart, but in the end, he still sat down. This martial art tea party was held in his own name, and had nothing to do with the Star Brilliance Palace Hall. Thus, he could not use the name of the Alchemist Society. Black-grade high-level alchemists were indeed very awesome, and even large sects did not dare to kill them, but that did not mean that the Alchemist Society would definitely give them face. Bao Xian Ran could totally ignore him. Could it be that he would dare to run to the Cold Water sect to protest? Seeing that even Cheng Fei Jun was scared, everyone despaired. Could it be that they, a few thousand people, were going to be robbed by a single person, even if this person was in the spiritual ocean tier? Run! In any case, this guy was alone. If everyone ran together, how could he stop them? You can't escape. Bao Xian Ran broke into a smile. This is the command flag of our sect. Once it is unfurled, the area within a radius of 1 li will be sealed. Without my permission, no one can even think of leaving. Now, obediently hand over the item, he said coldly. He had come under the orders of his master to stop the people here from entering the North region to participate in the entrance exam of the Winter Moon sect. That was because the Cold Water sect and the Winter Moon sect were not on good terms, so if he could weaken the other party a little, or even annoy the other party a little, it would be good. However, after coming here, he actually discovered that there was still a large amount of 100-year-old ginseng and Ganoderma appearing here, which instantly made him overjoyed. This time, he was going to make a huge fortune. Grandmaster Ling, we can only rely on you now. Qi Yongyi and the others all gathered around him. Grandmaster Ling, beat that guy to death. Right, that guy is too despicable. Everyone said one after another. There was an Earth-grade alchemist here, and even if the sect master of the Cold Water sect came personally, he would have to give him some face. Just like how the spiritual pedestal tier was mortal and the flower blossom tier was immortal, once an alchemist's level surpassed Earth grade, their status would also soar, and it was not something that a black-grade high-level alchemist could compare with. Moreover, Ling Han's battle prowess was publicly acknowledged by everyone. Consecutively defeating Feng Yan and Yan Tianzhao, he was practically freakish. Ling Han could not help but laugh, and said, "Didn't you guys not allow me to make a move?" Everyone was embarrassed. Previously, they had hoped that Ling Han would not make a move, and only wanted to obtain the first place in the martial art tea party, but now an outsider had come, and with the power of the spiritual ocean tier, they could only ask Ling Han to come out and suppress him. Lu Yutong and Li Xichan also began to encourage from the side. If Ling Han stood out at this moment and defeated Bao Xian Ran in an invincible manner, then it would be equivalent to establishing his position as the first person in the younger generation of the 9 nations of the desolate north. They naturally hoped that their beloved could win such a good reputation. Ling Han smiled and stood up. It couldn't be helped, Bao Xian Ran wanted to rob them, and this created a direct conflict of interest with Ling Han. There was nothing much to say about wanting to steal his things, he would just kill him. Ling Han's killing intent circulated. This wasn't Rain Country, where there was the Rain Emperor to hold him back. Moreover, he had now become an Earth-grade alchemist, and in terms of status, he was even above the Rain Emperor. If he wanted to kill someone, who could stop him? "You want to steal my things?" Ling Han asked as he walked in front of Bao Xian Ran. Meanwhile, Hunyou grabbed onto the corner of Ling Han's clothes and stood at the side. She could not help but bare her teeth, wanting to steal Ling Han's things. Ling Han was Niu's, so Ling Han's things were naturally Niu's as well, so what you wanted to steal was Niu's things. Hunyou was very angry. Trash in the first layer of gushing spring tier. Bao Xian Ran sneered. Since when did trash in the first layer of gushing spring tier dare to stand in front of me and speak? "Hurry up and kneel," he shouted lightly, and the sound wave took form, vibrating towards Ling Han. He had not cultivated martial arts techniques that specialized in sound, but with his cultivation level in the spiritual ocean tier, this shout was still like a lion's roar, capable of shattering the skin, flesh, blood, and bones of a gushing spring tier cultivator. Xiao, Ling Han had not made a move yet, but Hunyo had already moved first. Her small body turned into a flash of light, and instantly appeared above Bao Xin Ran's head. Pa, 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 the little girl continuously slapped Bao Xin Ran's face. Pooh! Seeing this scene, everyone spluttered. A little girl of 5 or 6 years old was violently torturing Bao Xin Ran. Was this a dream? Only the martial artists of Rain Country revealed proud expressions. Previously, even someone as strong as Yan Tian Zhao was severely restrained by Hunyo, and in the end, he had to use a powerful move to win. In the end, he was almost shattered into pieces by a single slash from Ling Han. This big and small pair was definitely a monster among monsters, and Ling Han had now become an earth-grade alchemist, causing others to only be able to sweat. This freakishness had no limits. Ah! Bao Xin Ran was struck dumb, but immediately came back to his senses. He had been mighty and domineering for half a day, but now he was actually slapped in the face in public. How embarrassing was this? He hurriedly swung his fist at Hunyo, but Hunyo's speed was too fast. With a xiao, she appeared behind him and threw another series of attacks. Bao Xin Ran's back instantly blossomed, and blood splattered everywhere. Damn it, damn it! After failing to catch Hunyo a few times, Bao Xin Ran knew that her speed was far above his, so he hurriedly leaped to the side of the flag. After grabbing onto it, he shouted loudly, "Cold water is invincible, freeze 1,000 miles." Hong, a white-colored cold air shot out from the flag, instantly turning everything within a radius of 30 meters into ice cubes. Ling Han and Hunyo were no exception, and were both frozen. Chapter 306. What a powerful move. It instantly restrained the two of them. Everyone was originally cheering, but when they saw this scene, all of them felt despair. Bao Xin Ran was already powerful enough, but now he actually had an even more powerful spiritual tool in his hands. Who else could be a match for this flag? It was obvious that this was a spiritual tool. Once the will of martial art was awakened, the chill would be sealed in ice. Who would be able to get close? It was said that the sect guarding treasure of the Cold Water School was called the Cold Water Flag. Once it was activated, it would truly seal 1,000 kilometers in ice. It was extremely terrifying. This flag was only an imitation, so its might was far from being able to compare with the real Cold Water Flag. Was it still not enough to suppress 2 gushing spring-tier martial artists? Bao Xin Ran made a "pei" sound. A little girl actually needed him to sacrifice a command flag in order to subdue her. It was really quite embarrassing. Cheng Fei Jun, on the other hand, revealed a cold smile. He had initially wanted to rely on Luo Jifeng to finish off Ling Han, but the other party had actually not succeeded even after so many days. This caused him to silently curse Luo Jifeng as useless. But now, Bao Xin Ran was actually going to help him fulfill his wish, causing him to want to run over and hug Bao Xin Ran, giving him a fierce kiss. What a good person. Ka, ka, ka. At this moment, a change occurred. A large number of spiderweb-like cracks appeared on the layer of ice surrounding Ling Han. It could be seen that there was a ball of scarlet flames circulating around his body, and it had already melted a hole in the ice. Deviant flame Cheng Fei Jun's eyes immediately turned red. He had possessed a strange flame before, so even though he was so far away, he could feel that the strange flame was a little familiar, yet completely different. His own deviant flame had already been devoured by Ling Han's deviant flame. It was obvious that this strange flame was more powerful. It was inevitable that 2 strange flames had fused together. I want. Cheng Fei Jun shouted in his heart. To be able to melt even the ice seal of the command flag, the power of the strange flame was truly astonishing. And the sound of ka 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 did not come from the layer of ice on Ling Han's side, but from Hunyo's side. The little girl's mouth was wide open as she chewed continuously, crushing the ice and swallowing it at an incredible speed. In just a short while, her little head had already popped out, and the rest of her body was also rapidly liberating. Damn, what kind of foodie is this? He can even eat this kind of ice seal. Bao Xan Ran's face twitched. These two fuck you monsters, especially Hunyo, what kind of teeth did she have? His killing intent immediately surged, and his eyes locked onto Hunyo. Now that she had not escaped, he could very easily kill her. Clang, the two swords at his waist were unsheathed, cold as water. Hey, have you forgotten that you still have me? Ling Han smiled faintly. Trash in the first layer of the gushing spring tier, I'll kill you first, then kill this little girl. Bao Xian Ran's figure flew like the wind, charging towards Ling Han. His two swords slashed together, and Hong, the will of martial art circulated, and the sky was filled with ice and snow. This was not an illusion, but real ice and snow. After reaching the Sea of Soul's realm, the will of martial art could be released, which could affect heaven and earth and form physical attacks. On every piece of ice and snow, there was a small glowing vein-like pattern that possessed terrifying destructive power. Bao Xian Ran had previously underestimated Ling Han, who was able to easily escape from the ice seal of the flag. This was worthy of him killing. Ling Han drew his sword and activated the Four Seasons sword technique. The concepts of spring, summer, autumn, and winter circulated, forming a cycle of heaven and earth. Bao Xian Ran's attack contained the will of martial art, so it was obviously stronger, but Ling Han's power was not much weaker, and added with the fact that the Four Seasons sword technique was a black-grade high-level martial arts technique, its power was extraordinarily great, and it very well compensated for the lack of will of martial art. Hung, the two of them continued to exchange blows, and for a moment, it was hard to determine who had the upper hand. Quick, pinch me, am I dreaming? Why is it that a guy in the first layer of the gushing spring tier is exchanging blows with a spiritual ocean tier warrior? Someone mumbled. My eyes must be blurred, haha, how is this possible? Damn, I'm going crazy, is this really gushing spring tier? Seeing this scene, aside from the martial artists of Rain Country, the others all cried out as if they had gone mad, clutching their heads. This was too surreal. A mere martial artist in the first layer of the gushing spring tier could actually fight a spiritual ocean tier warrior head-on and not be at a disadvantage. It was practically a dream. Although Hunyo was also in the gushing spring tier, at least she didn't fight Bao Xian Ran head-on and won with speed, which was at least acceptable. But Ling Han definitely had the aura of the first layer of the gushing spring tier, yet he could fight a martial artist in the fifth layer of the spiritual ocean tier head-on, practically blinding their dog eyes. A gushing spring tier could be this strong. Not only Ling Han, but also Hunyo. The two of them did not fall into a disadvantage when fighting against Bao Xian Ran, perfectly illustrating what was called a monster, what was called a freak. You guys still don't know, right? He's Ling Han, someone from Rain Country said. What? He's Grandmaster Ling, an Earth-grade alchemist. That's right. How is this possible? He was only 16 or 17 years old when he went up. I'm really going crazy. A 16 or 17-year-old youngster can not only fight a spiritual ocean tier warrior head-on, but is also an Earth-grade alchemist. I've always been called a genius, but compared to him, I look like an idiot. I'm also an idiot. We're both idiots. Everyone sighed. Originally, they felt very good about themselves. They always felt that they were at the top of the younger generation. But now, they realized how ignorant and arrogant they were. On the other side, Hunyo had naturally bitten her way out of the ice seal. However, when she saw that Ling Han and Bao Xian Ran were engaged in a fierce battle, she did not rush up to join the battle. She had a strong sensitivity towards battles, and knew that Ling Han had not fully displayed his strength yet. He could definitely win, so she naturally did not interfere. Bao Xian Ran was astonished. He was a genuine martial artist in the 5th layer of the spiritual ocean tier, and Ling Han was a genuine martial artist in the 1st layer of the gushing spring tier, but Ling Han's battle prowess was not the slightest bit inferior to his. How could he possibly accept this? If his opponent also reached the spiritual ocean tier, then wouldn't he be killed in one move? No, I can't let such a genius live. He leaped up, intending to activate the flag and seal Ling Han in ice before killing him. You want a second time? Ling Han smirked coldly. The mysterious 3000 was ready to be used, and this powerful move only needed the time of 2 or 3 breaths to complete its preparation. Very quickly. One of Bao Xian Ran's hands had already touched the flag. He was going to pull out the flag and use it as a weapon to sweep at Ling Han. If he was swept by it, Ling Han would first be sealed in ice, and then be shattered by the tyrannical power. Then he would naturally be thoroughly dead. Hong, 4 flashes of sword light lit up at the same time. One was a real sword, and the other 3 were sword chi. Then, they formed a total of 400 flashes of sword light that shot towards Bao Xian Ran. Bao Xian Ran's eyes shone with extreme terror, and he hurriedly waved the flag to parry. Pu, 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 sword light scattered, shaking the heavens and earth. Bao Xian Ran staggered backwards, his body covered in wounds, many of which were deep to the bone, revealing his pale white bones. His entire person was completely unrecognizable. However, being able to withstand the mysterious 3000 and not die, he could be considered to have some ability. The flag blocked most of the attack, or else he would still have died. Phone reading was more refreshing. Chapter 307. Good dogs don't block the way, get lost. Ling Han waved his hand. Ha! Luo De laughed coldly. Youngsters nowadays were truly ignorant and fearless. Facing him, who was in the spiritual pedestal tier and on the prodigy roll, they still dared to be so arrogant. He snorted, and said, I won't bicker with you for now. Speak, how did you get to know Fairy Zhu? In the end, he still couldn't let go of Zhu Xian'er's attitude towards Ling Han. What was the relationship between the two that Zhu Xian'er actually saluted Ling Han? Oh, you're talking about Xian'er. Ling Han laughed mischievously, and began to spout nonsense. He said, she's my family's child bride, so she obviously has to salute when she sees me. My Zhu still understands the 3 obediences and 4 virtues. Luo De was dumbfounded by his bluff, and then came to his senses. He said, nonsense. Zhu Xian'er was a proud disciple of the Half-Moon sect, so how could she be someone's child bride? TSK, 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 you even discovered that, what a high IQ. Ling Han deliberately praised. Luo Da's face darkened. This youngster actually dared to play him like a monkey. His eyes spat fire, and he said, if you don't tell the truth, don't blame me for being merciless. He released the aura of the spiritual pedestal tier, which surged forth. For a genius like him, a month's time was enough to change a lot. For example, he completely stabilized his tier, pushing his cultivation to the late stage of the 1st layer of the spiritual pedestal tier, and his strength was at least 30% stronger than when he battled Xinzhong Cheng. He had unlimited room for improvement, but no matter how much he solidified his tier in the 9th layer of the spiritual ocean tier, there would always be a limit, and the closer one was to the limit, the harder it was to improve. Thus, in the same amount of time, his strength would definitely surpass Xinzhong Cheng's. If he battled Xinzhong Cheng again, he had full confidence that he could win. Ling Han deliberately hugged his shoulders, and said, don't scare me, I'm easily frightened. Ha, you indeed should be frightened, because you're facing Luo De on the prodigy roll, Luo De said proudly, feeling satisfied with Ling Han's fear. Ling Han continued, I'll go crazy when I'm frightened and like to beat people up. Who knows how many people were beaten by me until they knelt on the ground and called me grandpa. You wouldn't want to call me grandpa, right? The corner of Luo Da's mouth twitched. He felt that the mouth of this young man in front of him was really sinister. He said darkly, you have such a cheap mouth, that's seeking your own death. Hey, you're scaring me again, Ling Han said with a smile. I'm not scaring you, I'll really beat you. Luo Da moved. He stretched out his right hand, martial intent circulating, and Hong, light burst forth. It was as if he was stepping on divine clouds, his aura mighty. Ling Han smiled faintly, and clenched his right hand into a fist. When Luo Da grabbed at him, he suddenly shot out a punch. Pang! A heavy sound rang out, and the two of them retreated a few steps at the same time. Ling Han was surprised, and said, I underestimated you a little, actually being able to force me to retreat. Sigh, as expected, one mustn't be too proud, this has to change. Damn! Luo Da, on the other hand, was both shocked and furious. Those words should have been said by him, all right? He was in the spiritual pedestal tier, and in terms of battle prowess, he should absolutely crush spiritual ocean tier warriors, but in that exchange of blows, although he didn't use his full strength, nor did he use any martial arts techniques, that was still a spiritual pedestal tier attack. Most importantly, Ling Han hadn't even reached the 9th layer of the spiritual ocean tier, yet his battle prowess was so shocking, practically a second Xinzhongcheng. He was truly a monster. On this year's prodigy roll, this youngster was definitely a dark horse, and would shine brilliantly. Thinking of this, Luo Da's killing intent instantly rose. There was no need for such a freak to compete with him on the prodigy roll. Killing intent towards me. Ling Han shook his head, and said, originally, there was no enmity between us, so it's fine if I beat you up, but you actually wanted to kill me, so I could only kill you. This is called not losing out. Kill me? Luo Da sneered. Even Xinzhongcheng definitely wasn't his match now, not to mention that Xinzhongcheng hadn't even reached the 9th layer of the spiritual ocean tier. He unsheathed his swords. Holding two short swords in the hands of a brawny man like him, a sense of incongruity instantly rolled over. Ling Han casually waved, and Xiao, a branch landed in his hand. He smiled, and said, I'll use this branch to kill you. Luo Da was furious. Xinzhongcheng didn't draw his sword when he fought, and now Ling Han used a branch to say he would kill him. Both of them were looking down on him too much. He snorted angrily, and said, you'll soon suffer the consequences of your own actions. You have strength, that's how confident you are. Ling Han laughed loudly, and took the initiative to attack. With a wave of his sword, Xiao, 7 flashes of sword chi appeared. 7 flashes of sword chi. Luo Da exclaimed, his face revealing a shocked expression. He, too, had only cultivated 6 flashes of sword chi. Die! Luo Da brandished his 2 swords, and white threads weaved densely, forming something like a spider's web. This was the secret art he cultivated, able to turn sword chi into something like a fish net. Once retracted, a terrifying destructive power would burst forth completely. Wasn't he just lagging behind by 1 flash of sword chi? He had the advantage of a major tier, and with a spirit tool in hand, it was more than enough to make up for it. Pu, Ling Han's sword chi slashed onto the fish net, and instantly tore a hole in the fish net, but these sword chi were also annihilated. It could be said that they were evenly matched. However, Luo Da's expression became more and more unsightly. He clearly had the advantage of a major tier, and had even used a spirit tool to activate sword chi, but even so, the quality of the sword chi of both sides was only tied. One had to know that the quality of sword chi depended on 3 factors, one's own power, comprehension of the sword path, and the medium that was used to unleash sword chi. He had an absolute advantage in terms of power and medium, yet it was still a tie. It could be seen how much worse his comprehension of the sword path was compared to Ling Han's. How about it? Ling Han asked with a smile. He waved the branch, and once again sliced towards Luoda. With the infusion of origin power, this branch was also as hard as an iron sword. Arrogant and conceited, you will only bring about your own destruction. Luoda sneered, and waved his sword to meet the attack. Innumerable threads weaved densely, wanting to trap Ling Han within. Ling Han had no intention of tangling. His expression became stern, and he used mysterious 3000. Luoda instantly felt a chill run through his entire body. The aura that Ling Han emitted now actually reminded him of Yao Huiyu. Back then, he only raised a finger, and sword intent soared to the skies, easily killing 2 elites in the 9th layer of the spiritual pedestal tier. They were 2 completely different people, but the aura they emitted was shockingly similar, which made his legs go weak. Hung, 276 flashes of sword light floated, and blasted towards Luoda. Luoda gritted his teeth. Shwa, 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 as he retreated, he waved his sword, weaving a dense net of sword chi in front of him. Pu, piu, 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 the sword light attacked, and this large net instantly shattered with a loud bang. The speed at which he weaved was far inferior to the destructive power of the sword light. Although he lost a few dozen flashes of sword light, there were still close to 200 that blasted towards him. Luoda roared loudly, blocking with all his might. The sword light surged past, and he was wounded all over, but his life was saved. After all, these sword lights were activated by tree branches, and not only were their numbers far from reaching 800, the destructive power of the sword lights was also much weaker. Added with the fact that Luoda was in the spiritual pedestal tier after all, and had the ability to battle surpassing his own cultivation level, he finally escaped the calamity. Phone reading was more refreshing. Chapter 308. Cheng Fei-jun organized this martial art tea party to, on one hand, pick out geniuses for Luo Ji-feng to recruit, and on the other hand, establish his personal prestige. When the time came, he could use his status as a black-grade high-level alchemist to naturally convince others to join. But now, Cheng Fei-jun was completely forgotten in a corner, while Ling Han obtained everyone's acknowledgement and gratitude. This really made Cheng Fei-jun seethe with anger. Who asked him to shrink back at such a crucial moment? In the world of martial art, even if you were weak, if you fought to the death, others would give you a thumbs up and call you a good man. But fleeing without a fight and being afraid to fight in public was the most despised. Ling Han clasped his hands in greeting, then brought Lu Yutong and the others back to the inn. On the way back, Lu Yutong and Li Si were still dissatisfied, saying that since Ling Han got first place, he should ask Cheng Fei-jun for that restore heart pill. This made Ling Han laugh loudly, and was even more disdainful. To think that he, the mighty alchemy emperor, would still have to eat a second-rate pill concocted by a black-grade high-level alchemist? What a joke. Not long after returning to the inn, customers swarmed in like clouds. Zhu Wujiu was already too busy, so Guang Yuan and Ken Yi both went to help. Later, not only did the younger generation of the 9 nations of the desolate north come with origin crystals, even many alchemists from the Star Brilliance Pavilion rushed over upon hearing the news. Those who did not enter the flower blossom tier were all mortals, and mortals only had a mere 100 years of life. Who didn't want to live a few more years? The more powerful the elderly were, the more they cherished their lives. To live a few more years, they were really willing to pay any price. Though the effects of 100-year-old ginseng and Ganoderma were not nature-defying, they could still prolong one's life, and living 3 to 5 more years was definitely not a problem. Moreover, these things were very nourishing and could heal internal injuries, which was equivalent to prolonging one's life. Lu Yutong and Li Si-chan became housewives, happily counting the origin crystals on the side, but were looked down upon by Hunyo. She thought to herself, these 2 silly girls, what's so good about origin crystals? They should be sticking to Ling Han. After selling for a day, Ling Han earned an astonishing 100,000 crystals. This was a fortune that would make anyone envious. It was guaranteed that even the Rain Country royalty would at most be a fraction of it. The auction was just around the corner, and it would start in 2 days. On the other side, under the urging of the 3 Earth-grade alchemists, Ling Han's alchemist certification would be completed very soon. At most, it would take another 5 days, and his proof of identity would be sent over. Ling Han was very satisfied and began to think about where he should go next. The Star Brilliance Palace Hall was only a transit station on his way out of the desolate north, so it was obviously impossible for him to stay here for a long time. He would also take the opportunity to certify as an Earth-grade alchemist, giving him a guarantee that he could do as he pleased. Now that these 2 things were about to be completed, the next step naturally had to be put on the agenda. The Winter Moon sect was going to open its doors and accept disciples. After Ling Han heard this news from others, he considered for a while and decided to go to the Winter Moon sect. First, he had to find out news about his mother. Second, he had to collect some interest. For a large sect like the Winter Moon sect, they definitely had their own medicinal garden. Ling Han planned to empty out their medicinal garden to enrich the space in the Black Tower. Chapter 309. Old man, come out. You followed me for so long, you should come out for a breather, Ling Han said as he turned around. Luo Jifeng hid in the shadows and did not come out immediately. He thought that Ling Han was bluffing. How could a brat in the first layer of the gushing spring tier possibly discover his tracks? You can be shameless just because you have a cloth on your face. Ling Han sneered. Luo Jifeng was instantly enraged, and knew that he had indeed been discovered by Ling Han. He strode out, and said, Brat, how did you discover me? I guessed. Ling Han said casually. I faintly felt that there was a shadow following behind me. Thinking about it, to follow behind someone in the middle of the night, it must be an old dog that cannot be seen. Luo Jifeng was seething with anger from his scolding, and shouted angrily, How dare you? Hee hee, I've always been very bold. Ling Han broke into a smile. Luo Jifeng immediately calmed down. An elite of the spiritual pedestal tier naturally would not lose his composure like this. He clasped his hands behind his back, and said, Brat, you probably do not know my cultivation level, right? Spiritual pedestal tier. He did not wait for Ling Han to guess and revealed it first. I've heard that you even killed someone in the 5th layer of the spiritual ocean tier. Thinking about it, this makes you proud, thinking that I'm also that kind of trash. Wrong, wrong. Whether it's the spiritual pedestal tier or the spiritual ocean tier, you can't possibly have any difference in cultivation level, and this is precisely the key to your death. For some people, once you offend them, only death awaits you. Ling Han laughed, and said, So it's an old dog of the spiritual pedestal tier. My apologies, my apologies. I'm actually quite curious that Qing Fei Jun could actually command an old dog like you, so I don't think you have anything to be proud of. Bullshit, Qing Fei Jun is the one who listens to my orders. Luo Jifeng immediately reprimanded. However, the moment the words left his mouth, he could not help but shiver. In a stern voice, he said, Damn it, you actually dared to trick this old man into speaking. Ling Han shrugged, and said, In any case, you're here to kill me. Moreover, a spiritual pedestal tier against a gushing spring tier martial artist would definitely be able to crush him with a single hand. I'm someone who's definitely going to die, so even if I know some secrets, so what? Old dog, let me ask you, which party are you from? When Luo Jifeng heard this, he was stunned. The first sentence that Ling Han had said should have been his line, but why did it come from Ling Han's mouth? Although this was the truth, it made him feel extremely awkward. How can a man be so calm when he knows he's going to die? But when he heard Ling Han's last sentence, the old man became angry again. This kid still dared to call him an old dog. Why would a dead man need to know so much? He said coldly. Being called an old dog by Ling Han left and right made him reluctant to immediately kill Ling Han. He wanted to toy with the latter a bit first, then slowly kill him. Ling Han laughed and said, "An old dog will always be an old dog, refusing to listen to nice words, so I can only use force." Damn it! Luo Jifeng humphed angrily. He really could not stand being called an old dog by Ling Han, so he decided to first capture this brat, then slowly torture him. At the same time, collecting the strange fire was also a very troublesome matter. He needed Qing Fei Jun to be present, so he'd better first capture Ling Han. Small tower. Ling Han said softly. Instantly, a terrifying power burst forth from his dantian, instantly circulating through his entire body. First layer of the spiritual ocean tier, second layer, third layer, his cultivation level soared all the way, and instantly reached the 9th layer of the spiritual ocean tier. Luo Jifeng was just about to make a move, but suddenly stopped, and said in an extremely shocked tone, "Impossible, impossible, how did your aura suddenly soar to the 9th layer of the spiritual ocean tier?" From the first layer of the gushing spring tier to the 9th layer of the spiritual ocean tier, this was practically a leap of 2 major tiers. Who could accept this? Why would a dead man need to know so much? Ling Han said. This was precisely Luo Jifeng's answer to him previously. Luo Jifeng had already recovered from his shock and said, "So what if it's the 9th layer of the spiritual ocean tier? With a difference of 1 major tier, it's still as easy as turning over my hand for me to suppress you. I definitely do not believe that a small place like the desolate north could possibly have a 17-year-old in the 9th layer of the spiritual ocean tier, and also an earth-grade alchemist at the same time. You must have taken some alchemical pill that temporarily increased your cultivation level. This kind of increase only gives you power, but the concept of martial art cannot possibly increase correspondingly. At most, you can only display the battle prowess of the 3rd or 4th layer of the spiritual ocean tier. In front of me, this kind of battle prowess is practically trash," he said disdainfully. Ling Han's right hand shook, and a sword appeared out of thin air. It was not a normal metal sword, but the demon birth sword. Today, he would definitely not let Luo Jifeng off. This, what kind of spirit tool is this? Luo Jifeng's expression immediately changed greatly. Even if the demon birth sword did not awaken the martial art intent within, a level 10 spirit tool was still a level 10 spirit tool. One look at the patterns on the sword's body would cause a strong feeling of helplessness, as if he was facing a top-notch elite. Level 10 spirit tool, demon birth sword, Ling Han said calmly. This time, he did not hide anything. Level 10 spirit tool. Level 10 spirit tool. Luo Jifeng mumbled, his face immediately revealing a strong expression of greed. I understand, you are relying on this demon birth sword. Ha 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 ha, a level 10 spirit tool is indeed powerful, but you have no way of awakening the martial art intent within it. At most, it would be slightly sharp and slightly pressuring towards me. I have to thank you for gifting me such a valuable treasure. Ha ha ha, only I am worthy of this spirit tool. Is that so? Ling Han stretched out his left hand, and with a thought, weng, patterns appeared on his hand, releasing a 5-colored light. Pooh! Luo Jifeng instantly spluttered. This was the martial art intent, it was the real deal. How is this possible? How is this possible? He was instantly driven mad. Relying on alchemical pills to forcefully increase one's cultivation level was actually only increasing one's power. It was impossible for one's cultivation level of martial art to increase along with it. Could it be that Ling Han was really in the spiritual ocean tier, and had only forcefully suppressed his cultivation level previously? But a 17-year-old spiritual ocean tier and earth-grade alchemist, no matter how you looked at it, this was all nonsense. How could there be such a freak? No matter how much he dared to imagine, he would never have imagined that Ling Han's soul was actually once a heaven-tier elite, the Alchemy Emperor. Thus, putting aside an Earth-grade alchemist, even a heaven-grade alchemist could be immediately conjured out. And as long as his power reached the required level, with his heaven-tier divine sense, how could he not be able to manifest the martial art intent? Ling Han lightly shook the demon birth sword. Wang, the treasured sword glowed, and two vein-like patterns faintly emitted light. This meant that a portion of the demon birth sword's martial art will have been awakened by him. Even if it was just a tiny bit, how awesome was a level 10 spiritual tool? A frightening pressure swept out, instantly causing Luo Jifeng's heart to tremble violently, and his legs almost gave way, causing him to kneel down. Previously, a single decree from a spiritual infant-tier cultivator was enough to force Fu Yuansheng and the other two spiritual pedestal-tier elites to only be able to resist with all their might and not be able to make a move. A level 10 spirit tool was naturally even more awesome. However, Ling Han could only activate two vein-like patterns after all, and they were only slightly lit up, so the will of martial art that he could release was too limited. As a result, Luo Jifeng still retained a large portion of his battle prowess. I shall accept such a treasured sword. At the same time that Luo Jifeng was shocked, he became even more excited. Every black-armored warrior was in the 9th layer of the spiritual pedestal tier, and 700 black-armored warriors attacking together. What kind of concept was that? Even he had not thought that the combination of the mysterious 3000 and the demon birth sword could actually unleash such a terrifying might. Of course, this was also because with the power boost from the Black Tower, his power had soared to the 9th layer of the spiritual ocean tier. He had even purposely withdrawn 100 sword lights in order to spare Luo Jifeng's life, lest he killed him without being able to interrogate him for information. Who would have thought that this might was so great that it was practically nature-defying? Hong, 700 black-armored warriors surged past. Not only was the corpse chi that filled the air dispersed, all the skulls shattered, and Luo Jifeng also died without a complete corpse. There was not even the slightest fragment left behind. Luo Jifeng might not be able to withstand a mere black-armored warrior in the 9th layer of the spiritual pedestal tier, what more when he was attacked by 700 such beings at the same time. AI. Ling Han sighed. This was great, he directly killed the person, and the trail was cut off. He changed his mind. Go look for that attendant. He quickly returned and arrived at Luo Jifeng's courtyard. With a single move, he captured that attendant, knocked him unconscious, and stored him into the Black Tower. Then, he, too, flashed into the Black Tower, and began to interrogate him. I was forced. That attendant was scared half to death, and was filled with confusion and fear towards the space within the Black Tower. No matter how Ling Han asked, the attendant did not know anything. He was only adopted by Luo Jifeng after he came to town. At first, he thought that he had met a great benefactor, but in the end, he was also very disgusted. Thus, he used violence to torment Luo Jifeng every time, but it only made that old dog feel even better. Ling Han could only knock the attendant unconscious again, and then throw him out of the Black Tower. This trail had not been cut off, because Cheng Fei Jun was still alive. He asked the attendant to invite Cheng Fei Jun to Luo Jifeng's courtyard. In order to make the latter commit the crime, he carelessly stuffed an alchemical pill into the attendant's mouth, deceiving him that it was poison. If he did not take the antidote within 3 days, he would die from the poison. That attendant did not suspect anything at all, because Luo Jifeng had not returned all this while, making him feel that it was extremely likely that he had been killed by Ling Han. When he thought that even such a terrifying character like Luo Jifeng had been dealt with by Ling Han, how could he still dare to resist? Not long after, there was a sound from the courtyard's main door, and the sound of 2 footsteps entered. How come it's you? When Cheng Fei Jun saw Ling Han, he could not help but reveal an extremely shocked expression. Here there was no one that he could not accept as much as Ling Han. Ling Han humphed, and said, I am the disciplinary elder, why are you not kneeling upon seeing me? Cheng Fei Jun was startled by his bluff. After hesitating for a moment, he immediately revealed a ferocious glint, and said, You are deceiving me, Lord Luo. He exclaimed. How troublesome. Ling Han moved, knocking him unconscious with a palm, and then turned his gaze towards that attendant. I'll do it myself, the attendant said hurriedly, knocking against the wall, and fainting with a dong. He really had a clear mind. Ling Han could not help but laugh in spite of himself, and stored the two of them into the Black Tower at the same time. He returned to the inn, and once again entered the Black Tower, beginning to interrogate Cheng Fei Jun. Ling Han, how dare you? Even if you are an Earth-grade alchemist, privately detaining another alchemist is still a heavy crime. Cheng Fei Jun shouted fiercely once he woke up. Since when has even the remnants of the Thousand Corpse sect become so arrogant? Ling Han shook his head. What nonsense are you spouting? Who is the remnant of the Thousand Corpse sect? Cheng Fei Jun's expression changed, but he countered with a question, less nonsense, quickly let me go. You entered my space, and still want to leave. Ling Han smiled faintly, and his figure floated into the air. With a casual wave, a large mountain rose from the ground, evolving the changes of heaven and earth. Pooh! Cheng Fei Jun instantly spluttered, his eyes staring blankly as if he had become an idiot. This is an illusion, this is an illusion. He muttered, his whole body trembling. Pa! Ling Han slapped him, and Cheng Fei Jun immediately cried out in pain. This was definitely not an illusion. Chapter 311. Xiao, a strong qi sliced over from outside the valley, turning into a sharp blade that was 3,000 meters long, extremely terrifying. Everyone's faces turned green with fear. This strong qi was too long, and it was impossible to dodge to the left or right, nor upwards. It was a strike from the demonic ape, and even if they weren't directly cut, under the terrifying rising power, with their spiritual pedestal tier and spiritual ocean tier strength, they would definitely be shattered. Dig a hole. Someone immediately bombarded the ground. There had always been a saying of the shield of earth, and hiding in the soil might be able to avoid the disaster. Everyone followed suit, bombarding the ground madly. The people here were at least in the spiritual ocean tier, and blasting a hole in the ground was a simple task. In an instant, everyone became rats on the ground, drilling into the holes in the soil one after another. The strong qi streaked past, peng, 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 raising a cloud of dust on the ground. The terrifying energy swept out, slicing the mountain wall before disappearing. This mountain wall was also extraordinarily sturdy. Receiving the demonic ape's attack, it actually didn't completely slice off, but only left a mark that was not even a foot deep, truly shocking. Everyone hiding in the soil was forcibly sent flying out, all of them spewing blood. A few people who were too weak were even directly shaken into bloody foam, but most people still managed to survive. People like Zhu Xian-er, Xian, and the others all walked towards Ling Han. The reminder just now was precisely from him. Ling Han smiled faintly, and said, no need to thank me. Although there were some enemies here, he had absolutely no need to rely on the demonic ape to kill them. Could it be that he didn't even have this bit of confidence? Besides, some people weren't bad, it would be a pity if they died here. Quickly leave this place. The rescued people, regardless of whether they knew each other or not, all nodded at Ling Han, then ran out of the valley one after another. Being affected by the demonic ape's attack caused them to be heavily injured, and if it were to be hit a few more times, they'd definitely be finished. Moreover, this mountain wall was so sturdy that it was impossible for them to penetrate it with their strength, so there was only one way to obtain the heavenly luck stone: kill the demonic ape. Fortunately, when their own outstanding junior was attacked, the flower blossom tier elites outside the valley also began to risk their lives, restraining the demonic ape and not letting it have another chance to unleash a killing move. When Ling Han saw that most of the people in the valley had fled, he said to Hu Niu, Niu, can you go in? Hu Niu was a freak. Others couldn't do anything, but maybe she could. Let Niu try. Hu Niu squatted at the entrance of the cave, opened her mouth, and bit down. With a kacha, bright vein-like patterns immediately shone at the entrance of the cave. Once it was touched, the power laid down by the demonic ape would automatically appear. The little girl, however, went berserk and bit left and right, actually devouring all the vein-like patterns in the vicinity. Holy shit! Even if Ling Han knew that Hu Niu was extraordinary, being a freak to such an extent still made the corner of his mouth twitch, unable to accept it. That was a power defense laid down by the 9th layer of the flower blossom tier, and a king among demonic beasts, yet it was still bitten through by Hu Niu. What kind of teeth did she have? After biting out a small hole, Hu Niu immediately crawled in, and ran inside with pa. She knew what Ling Han wanted. In a short while, she ran back from the cave, crawled out of the cave, and threw herself into Ling Han's arms, handing over 9 pearl-like things. Immediately, a strong fragrance assailed the nostrils, making all the pores on one's body open. It was indescribably comfortable. Heavenly Luck Stone. Ling Han hurriedly stored the 9 heavenly luck stones into the black tower, then picked up Hu Niu and slowly walked out of the valley. Just now, he used his own body as a cover, so no one discovered that Hu Niu entered the valley. And who would have thought that Hu Niu actually had such great ability, being able to bite through even the power defense laid down by a flower blossom tier warrior. Now, everyone was paying attention to the battle in the sky. As long as the demonic ape was killed, then they would naturally be able to enter the cave and obtain the heavenly luck stone. Ling Han's heart thumped rapidly. He only knew that there were heavenly luck stones in the cave, but he didn't think that there were as many as 9, which meant that he could create 9 geniuses. 1 for him, 1 for Hu Niu, 1 for Ling Dongxing, 1 for Lu Yutong, and 1 for Ken Yi. These 5 definitely had to be used, and Guang Yuan, Zhu Wujiu, and Li Xichan's martial arts talent wasn't outstanding, so wouldn't it be a bit of a waste to give it to them? Forget it, everyone could only take 1 heavenly luck stone anyways, and it was useless to have more. If he didn't give it to them, who would he give it to? Spending it on his own people would be the best use of it. It was decided then. However, after a while, he'd already made up his mind. As for how he was going to use the remaining 1, he'd think about it later. Maybe he'd take it out for auction and make a ruthless profit. After exiting the mountain valley, he saw that Zhu Xian'er was looking at him with a complicated and surprised gaze. Presumably, it was his reminder that saved her life, but now he had to compete with her for the crimson-red chilling ice grass, so she definitely felt complicated. Previously, Ling Han was only in the 5th layer of the spiritual ocean tier, but now he shockingly stepped into the 7th layer. This advancement was too frightening, wasn't it? You. Ling Han's heart leaped out, and his killing intent soared. Ling Han smiled, and said, I just saved your life, and now you're repaying kindness with ingratitude. Startled, Ling Han swept his gaze around and saw that many people were staring at him with unfriendly expressions. Knowing that he'd angered the crowd, he immediately snorted, took a few steps back, and said, I'll spare you this time, but the next time we meet, I'll definitely take your head. Ling Han only laughed. The next time they met, he'd probably already broken through to the spiritual pedestal tier, and at that time, who knew who'd run and who'd chase after him. However, the battle in the sky was becoming more and more disadvantageous for the humans. The demonic ape was too powerful, and unlike the other beasts in the forest, it was indeed bloodthirsty and belligerent, but its intelligence wasn't affected. This meant that it only gained the benefit of increased lethality, and its battle prowess naturally increased. Retreat, everyone, retreat, a flower blossom tier elite shouted. They were going to suffer defeat in this battle, and the only plan now was to retreat first, then gather more elites to come over. This time, even a spiritual infant tier elite would be alarmed. Ling Han didn't care. Anyways, the heavenly luck stone was already in his hands, so retreat was retreat. He'd go guard the crimson-red chilling ice grass, and when he reached the 9th layer of the spiritual ocean tier, he'd use the Black Tower's power installation to take away this stock of spirit medicine, not wasting the benefit of the power installation to increase his physique. Wait! With a long howl, a figure shot over, high up in the sky, yet emitted a domineering aura that intimidated the 9 heavens and 10 earths, extremely shocking. There were lines of vein-like patterns blossoming around his body, and they were like blooming celestial flowers. The scene was astonishing. At first, Ling Han thought it was Yao Huiyu. Only such a domineering youngster could release such a powerful aura, but when he focused his eyes, he could faintly see that this was a man in the prime of his 30s, brimming with a natural might, as if he was a natural-born emperor. Ling Han's mouth slowly opened, revealing a shocked expression. This person was actually Chapter 312. After that, an ordinary-looking old man appeared and entered another private room. The most important thing for the Spirit Treasures Pavilion to do business was to level the playing field, so these two people being able to enter a private room on the 5th floor meant that they, or the force they represented, were at least not weaker than a low-level Earth-grade alchemist. That old man was in the flower blossom tier. Ling Han was a bit surprised. Today's auction actually attracted an elite of the flower blossom tier, really not simple. People continuously entered, and not long after, he heard a very distinctive voice. Fairy Chi, what a coincidence to meet you again. We really are fated, why don't we sit together? Hee, from the day before yesterday until now, we've met a total of 17 times. So 17 times. So many times, then we're definitely fated. Fairy Chi, don't you and I look a bit more abnormal today? Get lost. Ling Han looked down from the window and saw Gu Fenghua chasing after Chi Hualan. This freak was grinning from ear to ear, his buttocks bouncing. These two also went upstairs, but did not come to the 5th floor. Obviously, they were not qualified to sit in a private room here. As for whether they were on the 2nd, 3rd, or 4th floor, Ling Han was not so free that he activated the Eye of Truth to search. As it turned out, the young people of the 9 nations of the desolate north were the foreign martial artists that had arrived. In the private room, Guang Yuan and the others were very fresh. Normally, they did not have the right to enter such a private room, even if the furnishings around them were not shocking. However, as they walked around and touched here and there, they had a different feeling. Lu Yutong and Li Si-chan were both girls, so they naturally had to pay attention to their image. Thus, they sat properly. Hunyo, on the other hand, did not care so much. She clung to Ling Han's arms and giggled happily. After a while, the auction finally began. Ling Han was bored, so he lay down and slept, while Hunyo continuously teased him with her small hands. One big and one small were very happy, making Lu Yutong and Li Si-chan extremely envious, wanting nothing more than to take their place. The two girls looked at each other and nodded. They felt that they couldn't be careless just because Hunyo was young. This little girl couldn't be underestimated, and after another 10 years, the little girl should have grown into a big girl. At that time, it would be too late to be on guard. Fire, theft and tigress. Ladies and gentlemen, the item that we are going to present to you now is a treasure from the ancient era. It has an incomparably symbolic meaning. The auctioneer's spittle flew as he spoke. That is the alchemy cauldron that Grandmaster Ling Han, the man who created the 3-fire guide technique and was known as the Alchemy Emperor, had once used. Ling Han, Guang Yuan, Lu Yutong, and the others all walked towards Ling Han. They could naturally tell that this Ling Han was not this Ling Han, but the two of them actually had the same name, and were both geniuses of the Tao of alchemy. They couldn't help but click their tongues in wonder. Ha, I heard that there is also a person called Ling Han here. A cold voice was suddenly heard from one of the private rooms. It was a very old voice. You really don't know the immensity of heaven and earth, actually daring to have the same name as the former alchemy emperor. Ha, you indeed overestimate yourself. It's not strange to have the same name, but what kind of achievements did great alchemist Ling Han of 10,000 years ago have? To have the same name as him, you really deserve to die. This was the voice of a woman. The voice was tender, but filled with ridicule. Though it was impossible to tell which private room these two voices came from, it was certain that they came from the 5th floor, which instantly made Ling Han think of the cloaked woman and the old man in the flower blossom tier that he had seen before. Ling Han didn't know whether to laugh or be angry, because both of them were him, but one was praised to the top of the clouds, while the other was stepped on underfoot, which made him feel like he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. What a coincidence! Who asked the two of them to have the same name? Small Tower wouldn't have done it on purpose, right? I don't know who that Grandmaster Ling of 10,000 years ago was, but the current Ling Han is only 17 years old, yet is already an Earth-grade alchemist. He could be called an alchemy genius anywhere. Is this also called overestimating yourself? Lu Yutong was unhappy, and immediately defended Ling Han. Li Si-chan nodded, and said, I'm also an alchemist, and know some things about that Grandmaster Ling of 10,000 years ago. Li Si-chan nodded as well, and said, I'm also an alchemist, so I do know some things about that Grandmaster Ling from 10,000 years ago. That Grandmaster only became a low-level Earth-grade alchemist when he was 30 years old. After that, he became a middle-level Earth grade in 10 years, high-level Earth grade in 20 years, and finally became a Heaven-grade alchemist in 30 years. He was also the youngest Heaven-grade alchemist in history. Then, he broke through the limit of Heaven-grade in 50 years, and was honored as the Alchemy Emperor. These words were the truth, without any exaggeration at all. The ancient records recorded it like this. But when put together with Lu Yutong's words just now, it couldn't be any more obvious. 10,000 years ago, Ling Han only became an Earth-grade alchemist when he was 30 years old, but the current Ling Han was 17 years old. To say nothing of his future accomplishments, merely comparing the present Ling Han was definitely superior to the current Ling Han. Thus, the old man and the woman in the two private rooms were momentarily speechless. Who asked Ling Han to be younger? Ling Han, however, laughed and shook his head. He possessed all the memories of his previous life, which meant that he was standing on the foundation of his previous life and moving forward, so he definitely had to surpass his previous life. How could these two be compared together? However, it was strange. In his previous life, though Ling Han was called the Alchemy Emperor, he had already died for so many years, so why were these two still so respectful? Most alchemists knew that two Ling Han had the same name, but they had never seen anyone criticize Ling Han because of this. It was inexplicable, and it was two people at that. Esteemed guests, please don't hurt the harmony. Let's auction this alchemy furnace. As I said just now, this is an alchemy furnace used by the ancient Grandmaster Ling Han. The materials used are of the highest quality, but unfortunately, it's already damaged. Thus, it can only be used as an ornament and as a souvenir. The auctioneer hurriedly adjusted the atmosphere. He paused, then said, an item used by the ancient Grandmaster Ling has great significance, so we naturally can't sell it cheaply, or else it would be disrespectful to Grandmaster Ling. Thus, the starting price of this alchemy furnace is 1,000 origin crystals. 2,000. 3,000. 5,000. Just as he finished speaking, someone started to raise the price. From the voices, it was obvious that it was Long Yongzhang and the other two big shots of alchemy. True, the ancient Ling Han's reputation was too resounding. The items he used were totems, spiritual pillars, and had incomparable symbolic significance to alchemists now. In just a short while, the price shot up to 10,000, and it was still rising. Very soon, it broke through the 50,000 mark. Ling Han was shocked. Could it be that Long Yongzhang and the other two had come for the alchemy furnace that he had used in the past? To be honest, that alchemy furnace was indeed a good item. It was forged from purple moon and stars iron, and its heat conductivity and pressure resistance were all excellent. However, it was already damaged, and could no longer be used for alchemy. Moreover, it looked extremely damaged. Even if the materials were taken back and refined again, there wouldn't be much left. Thus, the true value of this alchemy furnace was only about 10,000 origin crystals, but now, it had already exceeded that by several times. Chapter 313. This alchemy furnace that Ling Han had once used, and now only had symbolic significance, was still soaring in price, and very soon crossed the threshold of 100,000 origin crystals. However, the three big bosses of alchemy had no intention of giving up, and continued to increase the price, as if they wouldn't stop until they emptied out all their savings. The three alchemists have true love for the Grandmaster Ling Han from 10,000 years ago, Guang Yuan said ruefully. Yes, it's already over 100,000 origin crystals. How much higher is the price? Zhu Wujiu also nodded. Ling Han's expression instantly darkened. He didn't need such true love. Lu Yutong and Li Xichan thought that Ling Han was in a bad mood because he was inferior to the Ling Han from 10,000 years ago, and hurriedly comforted him. Hun Yo was much more direct, kissing him on the cheek and giggling. However, Long Yongzhang and the other two had no intention of stopping. The price soared to 200,000, and was advancing towards 300,000, which made people speechless. Firstly, it was the determination of the three big bosses, and secondly, it was the wealth of alchemists. 300,000 origin crystals, what kind of concept was that? Even for the three big bosses of alchemy, 300,000 origin crystals would probably be a huge loss. After all, they usually concocted black-grade alchemical pills, and black-grade alchemical pills were usually sold with gold and silver. The three alchemists were definitely still trying to break through to become Earth-grade middle-level alchemists, and every time they failed, the materials consumed would be at an astronomical price. They were definitely bought with origin crystals. Thus, these three being able to save 300,000 origin crystals was indeed awesome, but they had probably reached their limit. As expected, after reaching 300,000, the three big bosses of alchemy seemed to lack confidence. In the end, the price was fixed at 332,853 origin crystals. Why was there a fraction? That was because Long Yongzhang and the other two were really going all out, taking out all the origin crystals they had on them. Now that the highest price was set by Li Xiyuan, he couldn't help but look happy. He could finally win the alchemy furnace that the alchemy emperor had once used. This was a totem, a symbol. Are there any more bids? The auctioneer asked. He was shocked to see such a high price, but it was also reasonable. They were shocked because it was just a shabby pill furnace. However, who asked it to be used by the alchemy emperor? In the eyes of his believers, forget 300,000, even 1 million wouldn't be an exaggeration. 400,000. Just at this time, a young and pleasant female voice rang out. Her words were spoken lightly, but it caused everyone to jump. This was 400,000 origin energy crystals, not 400,000 gold and silver. Ling Han clearly heard that this woman was one of the two people who had ridiculed him just now. Previously, he was still wondering why the two of them didn't say a word during the auction since they worshipped him so much. It turned out that they were so confident that they would directly kill him. After competing for so long, she naturally knew the bottom line of Long Yongzhang and the other two. Thus, she could beat them with a single price and save as much money as possible. 500,000. Another voice rang out, hoarse and ancient. It was the other person who had mocked Ling Han earlier, the old man. 600,000. The woman didn't mind raising the price, as if this 600,000 was just a piece of paper. 700,000. The old man wasn't afraid to fight. 900,000. This time, it was Long Yongzhang's voice. It should be the three alchemy giants joining hands and pooling all the origin crystals together. 1,000,000. The woman and the old man spoke at the same time. 1,500,000. The woman paused, then directly called out a sky-high price. She seemed to be very impatient and didn't want to increase the price bit by bit. 2,000,000. The old man wasn't afraid either. Two super rich people. At the beginning, who would have thought that the true competitors for this pill furnace would actually be the two of them? Not to mention their status, just being able to take out 2,000,000 origin crystals was enough for them to sit in the private room on the 5th floor. To the Spirit Treasures Pavilion that did business, having money was the father. Ling Han couldn't help but sigh and murmured, "I've used quite a few pill furnaces now. Should I consider selling them all?" This caused Lu Yutong and the others to laugh. They thought he was mocking himself, but who would have thought that the two Ling Hans were actually the same person? After the price reached this height, even Long Yongzhang and the others could only be guests. They were all very regretful. This was a pill furnace used by the Alchemy Emperor. If it could be left in the Star Brilliance Palace Hall, then it could definitely make this place the holy land of all alchemists. However, they didn't know that as long as Ling Han once again reached the apex in the future, this place, as an important location for Ling Han to become an Earth-grade alchemist, would definitely become the holy land of alchemists. 300,000, 2-star origin crystals. The woman raised the price again, instantly giving everyone a fright. In theory, if the grade of origin crystals increased by one level, the price would indeed increase tenfold, but in reality, no one was willing to spend high-level origin crystals like money. Let's put it this way. If the same amount of 1-star origin crystals could allow one to complete a breakthrough in 3 years, then 2-star origin crystals would only need 1 year. Right, time, that was the most important thing. Especially for martial artists below the flower blossom tier, they only had a lifespan of 100 years, so the younger one broke through to the spiritual pedestal tier, the more time they had to break through to the flower blossom tier. Once they crossed over, they would be able to shed their mortal body. 1-star origin crystals were refined by spiritual ocean tier martial artists, and were extremely helpful to the cultivation of body refining, poly, gushing spring, and spiritual ocean tier martial artists, being able to provide enough origin power. However, for spiritual pedestal tier martial artists, the effects of 1-star origin crystals would be greatly reduced, needing 2-star origin crystals to display their effects. For flower blossom tier martial artists, 1-star origin crystals were completely useless aside from being used as money. Thus, the higher the grade of the origin crystal, not only did it mean better effects, it also meant more uses. Some precious spirit medicines could only be purchased with origin crystals, and even had to be 4-star, 5-star, or even 6-star origin crystals. Thus, the true value of 300,000 2-star origin crystals was far higher than 3,000,000 2-star origin crystals. 400,000, 2-star origin crystals. The old man was similarly calm. Everyone was so shocked that their eyeballs almost popped out of their sockets. What kind of concept was 400,000 2-star origin crystals? It required 40,000 spiritual pedestal tier martial artists to refine for an entire year. Were there 100,000 spiritual pedestal tier martial artists in the whole North region? Most importantly, these two people were so indifferent, as if they did not care at all. Were they really people from the North region? Ling Han was also very curious. If it was Long Yongzhang and his group fighting over the alchemy furnace, he could still understand, but what were these two people doing? He could not help but activate the Eye of Truth. First, he found the old man, but the old man immediately sensed him and gave a heavy humph, sending out a wave of sound. Woo! Ling Han gave a muffled humph, and a stream of blood immediately gushed out from his right eye. He had actually suffered a small loss from this blow. Flower Blossom Tear, that was a power that surpassed mortals. Ling Han, Lu Yutong and the others were all greatly shocked. Why did he suddenly shed tears of blood out of nowhere? Only Hunyo vigilantly stared in one direction, which was precisely where the old man was. Obviously, the little girl was not staring randomly, but had really sensed something, and had already revealed a fierce expression. Chapter 314. Ling Han pressed Hunyo down. That old man was too strong. Even if Hunyo possessed astonishing speed, she would not be able to do anything in front of a flower blossom tear cultivator. The old man could casually release a burst of chi, and it would be enough to kill the little girl. I'm fine. He shook his head and took out a towel to wipe off the blood. He could still feel a faint pain in his right eye, but once he circulated the indestructible heavens scroll, the pain immediately disappeared. It was only a matter of a few minutes, and his right eye had already completely returned to normal. As expected of the indestructible heavens scroll, it could even easily heal such a soft spot like the eyes. After a few minutes of tug-of-war, the cauldron was finally taken down by the cloaked woman, and she had paid up to 1,000,000 two-star origin crystals for it. With so many origin crystals, as long as I step into the spiritual ocean tier, I'll be able to charge into the 9th layer of the spiritual ocean tier in less than a month, right? Ling Han said inwardly. The purpose of origin crystals was to create an environment filled with origin power, speeding up cultivation. He focused his gaze to look for the cloaked woman. In just a moment, he found her, and what surprised him was that when he found the woman, she just happened to stand up, holding the pill furnace that she had just bought. She was actually about to leave. In other words, she had specifically come to bid for this pill furnace. Since she had obtained the pill furnace, she would naturally leave. Relying on the eye of truth, Ling Han caught a glimpse of her face, and he couldn't help but be slightly stunned. This woman was really beautiful, not inferior to Chi Hualan. However, regardless of whether it was this woman or the old man from before, they were not alchemists. Ling Han did not sense the slightest bit of an alchemist's aura from them. There was no doubt about this. As the alchemy emperor, if Ling Han still could not determine whether a person was an alchemist or not, then he should really buy a piece of tofu and knock himself to death. Two people who were obviously not alchemists spent up to 1,000,000 two-star origin crystals for a damaged alchemy furnace. Why was that? Previously, they had indeed admired their past selves very much, but to say that they were willing to pay such a high price for it was somewhat incomprehensible. The cloaked woman left, and the flower blossom tear old man also left. The two of them had the same goal, and that was only this alchemy furnace. Now that the pill furnace had an owner, they naturally had no reason to stay any longer. He really didn't understand. He could only treat them as true love and nouveau riche. After this great climax, not only did the rest of the auction cause Ling Han to feel drowsy, there were also quite a number of people below the stage who began to doze off as they sat, and some even began to snore. Ahem, ahem. The auctioneer hurriedly adjusted the order of the auction and took out a valuable item to be auctioned in advance. Finally, the atmosphere became lively again. Another half an hour later, an auction item caught Ling Han's attention. It was a statue that looked like a scorpion. It was completely black and emitted a cold metallic luster. According to the joint research of a few experienced appraisers, this should be an antique from 5,000 or 6,000 years ago. There are even some ancient words on it that are different from the current ones. After deciphering it, it roughly means, Scorpio Temple, life and death, reincarnation for 10,000 lifetimes. The auctioneer said, this should be a token, a key, and it can open the Scorpio Palace of the 12 Heaven Mystery Realms. Whoosh! As soon as he finished speaking, everyone stood up. All of them had excited expressions on their faces. The 12 Heaven Mystery Realms were one of the great mystery realms that had been passed down in the world. They opened once every 100 years, and the spiritual chi in the mystery realms was so abundant that it made people speechless. Cultivating in there for one day was equivalent to cultivating in the outside world for 10 or even 100 days. Because of this, the mystery realms nurtured innumerable spirit herbs that only opened once every 100 years. Not only were they old enough, but because of the spiritual chi, the quality of these spirit herbs was shockingly high. But this wasn't the main point. The main point was that the 12 heaven mystery realms had 12 mysterious palaces. It was said that the greatest treasures of the mystery realm, cultivation techniques, spirit tools, martial arts techniques, and medicinal pills, were hidden inside. There was once a lucky person who entered the Ares Palace, and his reputation quickly rose. In the end, he became an elite of the heaven tier, and a very powerful one at that. If it weren't for the suppression of the environment of the era he lived in, the whole world couldn't produce a shattering void tier elite. His achievements definitely wouldn't stop at the heaven tier, but the shattering void tier, or even shattering void to become a god. And to enter the 12 palaces, one would need a corresponding key. According to our pavilion's research, this should be the key to open the Scorpio Palace, but it could also be an imitation. Our pavilion can't be sure about this, because there are some things on this sculpture that we can't be sure about. The auctioneer circled back to the topic. Instantly, a considerable number of people looked disappointed. Thinking about it again, it made sense. If this key was real, then why would it be auctioned here? If it was brought to the middle state, there would be more tycoons there, and it would be able to be auctioned off at a really high price. Even so, there were still a considerable number of people who were filled with interest towards the sculpture. What if it was real? Ling Han, do you think it's real or fake? Lu Yutong couldn't help but ask out of curiosity. Ling Han focused his eyes, and the eye of truth was activated. The sculpture's form immediately disintegrated in his line of sight, disappearing layer by layer. When he saw an item deep within the sculpture, he couldn't help but smile, because it was actually a piece of paper. On it was written, "You've all been fooled, this is a fake, ha ha ha." But when he saw the signature at the end, his body couldn't help but tremble, and an expression of disbelief appeared on his face. What's wrong? Lu Yutong and Li Si-chan hurriedly asked. Nothing. Ling Han waved his hand, but anyone could see the abnormality on his face. How could Ling Han not lose his composure? Because the signature was a picture of a naked girl. That brush stroke, he could recognize with a single glance that it was that showy disciple of his, Jiang Yufeng. He wasn't at all surprised that Jiang Yufeng would do such a senseless thing, but what shocked him was that this stone sculpture was said to be something from 5,000 or 6,000 years ago. But Jiang Yufeng was obviously someone from 10,000 years ago. Even if Jiang Yufeng could break through to the shattering void tier, he would only have a lifespan of 1,000 years or so. How could he last until 5,000 or 6,000 years ago? Unless Jiang Yufeng had advanced a step further, stepped into the realm of immortals, and became an immortal. Although it was unknown whether immortals could be immortal, Azura Demon Emperor, who had been suppressed for tens of thousands of years, and had been cut into 9 pieces, was still alive and kicking. Jiang Yufeng was still alive, and had become an immortal. Then what about his other 3 disciples? Were they still alive? One had to know that the 4 of them had been taken as disciples by Ling Han back then, either because they had astonishing talent in alchemy, or because they had nature-defying comprehension in martial art. Otherwise, how could he have so much time to teach disciples when he was completely focused on alchemy? If Jiang Yufeng could become an immortal, then his other 3 disciples should also be qualified to do so. Then wouldn't he still have the chance to meet his 4 disciples? Haha, he really wanted to see their expressions at that time. It would definitely be very interesting. Chapter 315. Ling Han only kept a small piece of black stone, and gave the rest to Small Tower to repair itself. In that instant, the entire black stone turned into flying ash, and the source of chaos inside was completely extracted by Small Tower. He couldn't help but think that if Azura Demon Emperor entered the Black Tower, then even if he obtained a large piece of Chaos Source Rock to make his body, what use would it be? he would definitely be instantly extracted into ashes. Ling Han didn't immediately go to the crimson-red chilling ice grass. He was currently only at the 7th layer of the spiritual ocean tier, and had to wait until he reached the 9th layer of the spiritual ocean tier before going. If he went there now, he would only be sitting and waiting, which didn't suit Ling Han's personality. Thus, he and Hunyo strolled in the forest. There were still many spirit medicines here, and since he had the time, why not go look for them? The harvest was not bad, but in a few days, the demonic qi had mostly dissipated. More and more people poured into this area, and Ling Han's profits also plummeted. He stroked his chin, but still decided not to waste time, so he carved on a tree, writing, "Ding ergo, come and chase after your young master." This sentence was obviously said to Ding Yuan Xian. He still wanted to use Ding Yuan Xian's hand to sharpen himself, allowing him to break through to the 9th layer of the spiritual ocean tier as soon as possible. He walked and carved on the way, believing that with Ding Yuan Xian's ability, he should be able to track him down. And Hunyo imitated him, also carving on the tree. However, even though she looked like she was carved out of jade, the words that she carved were crooked and twisted. She even proudly stuck out her little butt and carved happily, without the slightest bit of shame. Only a day had passed, and as expected, Ding Yuan Xian had caught up. "I have to admit, you really have great guts," he said coldly, his eyes burning with fury. This youngster killed his younger brother, and now actually dared to take the initiative to provoke him. He was really going to be angered to death. "So, second in the world," Ling Han said with a smile. "So, first in the world," Hunyo said without the slightest modesty, and patted her little chest. "You guys!" Ding Yuan Xian roared furiously. His figure pounced out, charging towards Ling Han and Hunyo. His spiritual pedestal shone, making him look like a god. Ling Han laughed loudly, and raised his sword to attack. Instantly, 8 flashes of sword qi shot out. Seeing this scene, Ding Yuan Xian was naturally enraged. Ling Han had relied on his pressure to advance into the realm of 8 flashes of sword qi. When he thought of this, he burned with fury. Could it be that this brat had tasted the sweetness of success, and was going to use him as a whetstone again? However, he stared at the demon birth sword. Previously, he only knew that this was an extremely high-level spirit tool, which made his heart palpitate in shock. But later, when this sword was actually able to forcefully shake the 3 lives corpse caskets, everyone, including him, naturally knew that the demon birth sword was definitely not as simple as level 6 or even level 7. Who would not be envious? "This sword belongs to me," he said with a cold humph, and his attack was as quick as lightning. Ling Han used all his strength, and launched a counterattack against Ding Yuan Xian. However, the gap between their cultivation levels was really too wide. Very soon, he was riddled with wounds, and even his bones were showing. Thankfully, the indestructible heaven scroll was too powerful, and allowed his life force to be maintained at a shockingly exuberant state. It was only when he had lost too much blood, and even his eyes were beginning to blur, that Ling Han began to flee. As he ran, he took out ginseng and other tonics and consumed them madly, and used the indestructible heaven scroll to recover. He retreated as he fought, and was not fleeing in a defeated manner. In this battle, he gave it his all, but after 3 days, he still reached his limit, and had no choice but to hide inside the Black Tower. At this moment, there was practically not a single piece of uninjured flesh on his body. Even with the circulation of the indestructible heaven scroll, the speed at which he was injured was far greater than the speed at which he recovered, causing him to have 1 foot over the line of death. He hurriedly circulated a drop of indestructible true fluid to recover his body. Very soon, his flesh and blood regenerated, and he completely recovered. After swallowing a few alchemical pills that were helpful for cultivation, he crushed a few hundred origin crystals. Instantly, an endless amount of origin power enveloped him, and he greedily absorbed it. His cultivation level rose slowly. This cultivation session actually lasted for 2 days and 2 nights. When he finished cultivating, he had already quietly advanced into the 8th layer of the spiritual ocean tier. Very good, this sparring partner isn't bad. I'm afraid that in another month, not only will I be able to reach the 9th layer of the spiritual ocean tier, I might even be able to rush to the peak of the 9th layer, Ling Han mumbled, unafraid of how depressed Ding Yuan Xian would be if he heard these words. Let's go and find a sparring partner. Ling Han continued to leave words, while Hunyo giggled and helped to leave them, letting her unsightly handwriting wreak havoc on this part of the forest. Another 2 days passed, and Ding Yuan Xian indeed caught up again. 8th layer of the spiritual ocean tier. After sweeping a glance over Ling Han's body, Ding Yuan Xian instantly cried out in shock, his eyeballs almost popping out. He was exasperated. This brat really treated him as a sparring partner. Not only had he tempered the 8th flash of sword chi, he had now even advanced into the 8th layer of the spiritual ocean tier. If he continued to spar with this brat, wouldn't the latter advance into the 9th layer of the spiritual ocean tier at such a terrifying speed, and even directly step into the spiritual pedestal tier? He was really a bit afraid. Ling Han's battle prowess was too freakish, and perhaps the moment he entered the spiritual pedestal tier, he would have the qualifications to stand on equal footing with him. How could he bear to personally facilitate a fatal opponent? But this brat had killed his younger brother, so how could he let him off just like that? Kill, he definitely had to kill him. At least, this brat's current strength was far inferior to his. Ding Yuan Xian didn't know that Ling Han still had the Black Tower, which was the last layer of protection for his life. Otherwise, he would definitely turn around and leave. Just like when he fought with Rong Huanxian, the latter could hide in the 3 lives corpse caskets in the end. At least, a palm strike from a flower blossom tier warrior almost killed him. Do you dare to fight to the death with me? Ding Yuan Xian goaded. Is there something wrong with your head? I'm only in the 8th layer of the spiritual ocean tier, and you're in the 9th layer of the spiritual pedestal tier. I'll fight to the death with you, idiot. Ling Han shook his head, yet took the initiative to attack. The demon birth sword unfolded, and sword chi was like a rainbow. Just obediently be my sparring partner. Your sister. Ding Yuan Xian was extremely furious, and charged towards Ling Han in a frenzy of attacks. Previously, he had almost killed Ling Han a few times, so he was still confident in himself. As long as Ling Han's luck was slightly worse, he would definitely be able to kill the latter. Unfortunately, he was always that tiny bit off. After battling for another 3 days, Ling Han once again entered the Black Tower in a state close to death. After drawing in a drop of indestructible true fluid, he directly fainted from exhaustion. When he woke up, he hurriedly began to cultivate again. His improvement was obvious. He had reached the middle period of the 8th layer, and what was even rarer was that he had come infinitely close to death this time, which allowed him to have a deeper understanding of life and death. Life and death, these were opposites, but the end of life was death, and the end of death was also life. It was an endless cycle, just like Tai Chi. This was in line with the great Tao. Tao begets one, one begets two. Order and chaos, life and death, light and darkness, these opposites and cycles could all be traced back to the source. However, Ling Han's present cultivation level was too low. He could only be inspired, but could not comprehend at all. He used this inspiration on the path of the sword, and defined the path that he wanted to walk. Sword Chi, Sword Ray, everyone could cultivate them, but Sword Heart was different. This was a kind of profound brilliance, and one needed to have their own path. In his last life, the Sword Emperor walked the path of a ruler. With a strike of his sword, the whole heaven and earth would have to grovel before him. The setting sun Saber Emperor walked the path of emotionlessness. Even the sun, the source of life, could be cut down by him without hesitation. What kind of path did he want to walk? Chapter 316. In the eyes of the martial artists of the North region, the 9 nations of the desolate North was the region with the lowest level of martial art in the entire vast lands. They didn't even have a true flower blossom tier cultivator, and only barely had such an elite cultivator by relying on the power of the nation. Those below the flower blossom tier were all ants. In their eyes, such a remote and desolate place was naturally filled with country bumpkins and country bumpkins. But now, not only did a 17-year-old Grandmaster Alchemist appear, this person could even kill Bao Xin Ran. Although Bao Xin Ran couldn't be considered a true elite among the younger generation of the North region, he shouldn't have been killed by a country bumpkin from the desolate North. Moreover, this country bumpkin was only 17 years old, and had reached Earth grade in alchemy. There was such a genius in the world, ha 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 ha, so it's Grandmaster Ling. Come over tomorrow and ask for guidance from Grandmaster Ling, someone immediately said. I'll also shamelessly pay a visit to Grandmaster Ling, I'll come too. The youngsters of the North region said one after another, not caring whether Ling Han agreed or not, talking to themselves. Since even the last precious auction item was taken, everyone naturally left. There were many treasures in the world anyway, and this was only an ordinary auction. No one would be too disappointed because they didn't manage to buy what they wanted. After Ling Han took the blue scale beast fruit and 9 rings heaven hero saber, he settled the bill with the origin crystals he'd gathered. As for the debt he owed Long Yong Chang and the others, he'd slowly pay it back. Anyways, he still had a large amount of 100-year-old ginseng and Ganoderma, so he'd sell them to Gu Feng Hua and the others. They didn't lack money. At first, he was a bit displeased with these people talking to themselves and coming to visit him tomorrow, but since they'd all become potential customers, his attitude naturally changed. He was happy to play with them and settle the debt first. According to Long Changyong, his proof of being an alchemist would be sent over in a few days, so it was close to the time of his departure. Ling Han threw the 9 rings heaven hero saber to Ken Yi, and when he returned to the inn, he entered the Black Tower and began to pull out ginseng and Ganoderma. There were actually many other spirit herbs, but for those who weren't alchemists, ginseng and Ganoderma were still the best. Eating them raw was a great tonic. The next day, Gu Feng Hua and the others indeed came running over. Master Ling, I didn't expect you to be so young. Every person who came would say something similar, which made Ling Han's ears almost grow calluses. Ha ha ha, Ling Han, as expected, you're a pervert. You have some of my flair back then. Gu Feng Hua's voice rang out. The moment he entered, he gave Ling Han a passionate hug. However, he immediately moved closer to his ear and said, however, Fairy Qi is mine. If you dare to snatch her from me, be careful that I don't sprinkle itching powder on your underwear and make you scratch every day. This guy let go of his hand, but his face was still filled with enthusiasm. Ling Han gave him a look of disdain and said, you value your lover more than your friends. This is called every man for himself. For my happiness, I can only sacrifice you a little, Gu Feng Hua said without any trace of politeness. Brother Ling. Qi Hualan walked over gracefully, and clasped her hands in obeisance towards Ling Han. I have yet to repay the favor of saving me in the Devil Sky Mystery Realm, and I never thought that you would already become an Earth-grade alchemist. Hualan really doesn't know if there will be a day when I can repay the favor. Of course there is. Gu Feng Hua interrupted. He and I are good friends, so what's his is mine, and what's mine is still mine. So, if you devote yourself to me and marry me, that would be equivalent to repaying Ling Han's favor. Qi Hualan acted as if she had not heard anything, and smiled sweetly at Ling Han, and said, Brother Ling, are you interested in going to the Purple Star sect as a guest? She was a disciple of the Purple Star sect, and if she could pull Ling Han into the sect, then this merit would be indescribably great. A 17-year-old Earth-grade alchemist, even if he did not have the chance to advance to Heaven grade in the future, there should be no problem for him to advance to Earth grade high level. And the sect would spare no expense to help Ling Han advance to the flower blossom tier, and with the addition of spirit medicine to extend his lifespan, it would not be difficult for Ling Han to live up to 400 years. A whole 400 years, continuously concocting earth-grade alchemical pills. How many more flower blossom tier elites would the Purple Star sect have? It could be said that a high-level alchemist could completely change the fate of a sect. Yo, isn't little sister Qi reputed to be pure as jade and as clear as ice? How come you're also using a honey trap? Amidst light laughter, a woman with a graceful figure walked over, swaying gracefully. Her figure was graceful and shockingly hot, and her protrusion and fullness would make one drool. How could someone have such a good figure? Fiery red lips, black hair that cascaded down like a waterfall. This was an exquisite beauty, and was filled with a fiery charm. She was like a blooming flower, attracting men to pluck her, even if they would be pricked by the thorns because of it. Lin Xiangqin. Qi Hualan said softly. This fiery beauty was Lin Xiangqin. She bowed gracefully towards Ling Han and lowered her head slightly, revealing a small portion of her jade-like neck. It was snow-white and delicate, like silk and jade, astonishingly beautiful. She was really good at using her own advantage. There were obviously no explicit movements, yet it allowed others to fully experience her charm, making their hearts itch, and making them yearn for it. Extreme Imperial Sect's Lin Xiangqin pays her respects to Grandmaster Ling. She did not immediately stand up, and seemed to be waiting for Ling Han to go up and help her up. And this kind of opportunity, she was sure that no man would refuse it, right? All around them, Gu Fenghua, Su Wentong, and the others all revealed dazed and intoxicated expressions. In terms of appearance alone, it was hard to tell who was superior between her and Qi Hualan, but in terms of charm, she was more than a few streets ahead of Qi Hualan. Of course, there would definitely be many men who liked a pure type like Qi Hualan. Though Lin Xiangqin was only 20 years old, her fiery charm already had the air of a mature sister. Qi Hualan spoke straightforwardly, and immediately humphed, saying, "Vixen." However, Ling Han did not extend a hand to help her up. He had seen plenty of temptations from beauties in his previous life. At that time, he had reached the pinnacle of both the way of alchemy and martial art, and the beauties who were willing to throw themselves into his arms were of even higher status, and there was no lack of fairies in the deity transformation tier. Lin Xiangqin could not help but be surprised, but Ling Han had already turned around and walked away. She could only stand up by herself, rubbing her nose and revealing an expression of dissatisfaction. Lu Yutong and Li Si-chan smiled at each other. Their Ling Han was not a shallow person. If they wanted to obtain his attention, it would not be enough to just seduce him with their beauty. They could only use their sincerity to earn his trust. Grandmaster Ling, how about following me to the Extreme Monarch sect for a walk? Lin Xiangqin was not willing to admit defeat, and immediately caught up to him, asking sweetly. Sure, as long as you agree to one condition of mine, Ling Han said calmly. Hearing these words, everyone could not help but reveal a sliver of disdain. After pretending for so long, he was only a pervert. But who asked this pervert to be an earth-grade alchemist, and his future was limitless? It was really possible that he could have a captivating beauty like Lin Xiangqin. Lin Xiangqin also smirked coldly in her heart, feeling of disgust towards Ling Han, but the smile on her face was like a flower, and she asked sweetly, I wonder what condition Grandmaster Ling has? Help me flatten the Winter Moon sect. Chapter 317. Help me flatten the Winter Moon sect. Once these words were spoken, everyone fell silent out of fear. What kind of existence was the Winter Moon sect? Although there were many forces that could be called sects in the North region, only the 5 great sects were publicly recognized as the strongest, known as the 5 great sects of the North region, and the Winter Moon sect was one of them. Although the Imperial sect and the Heaven Essence sect were very awesome, in terms of absolute strength, they were all inferior to the Winter Moon sect. Perhaps only the three sects combined could rival them. And to flatten the Winter Moon sect, it would require at least 3 times the power of the Winter Moon sect to defeat a sect that had a great protective array and adopted a defensive stance. In other words, it would require at least 10 Imperial extreme sects to combine forces, and in this process, even the victor would pay a huge price. For an Earth-grade alchemist, which force would be willing to do so? Master Ling really knows how to joke. Everyone laughed dryly, instantly losing their arrogance and becoming well-behaved, because no matter how arrogant they were, they wouldn't dare to say something like flatten the Winter Moon sect. Whether it was the truth or just a joke. Ling Han, however, didn't care. The grudge between him and Feng Yan was something everyone in Rain Country knew, and they would find out if they made some inquiries. Thus, no matter how ruthless his words were, people would think it was because of Feng Yan, but they didn't know that this grudge also involved the previous generation. If a normal person said something like that, even if the Winter Moon sect didn't make a move themselves, there would be many bootlicking forces that would kill Ling Han. But now, this was an Earth-grade alchemist, whose status was similar to the Flower Blossom tier, so how would a normal force dare to make a move? Even a great force like the Winter Moon sect had to be wary of the alchemist society behind them. At most, they would beat up Ling Han and tell him not to speak carelessly, but they wouldn't dare to publicly kill Ling Han. Of course, what they would do in private was another matter. One sentence was enough to subdue these arrogant young prodigies. As Ling Han inquired about the current situation of the North region, he asked Zhu Wujiu to take out another basket of ginseng and Ganoderma to sell. These youngsters were not lacking in money. In the previous auctions, they could throw out 100,000 yuan crystals and they would be able to get it. Sure enough, even though these geniuses came from large sects and had seen and eaten 100-year-old ginseng and Ganoderma, they couldn't help but feel their mouths twitch when they saw such huge tonics placed in a basket as if they were cabbages. Sigh, compared to Master Ling, we are indeed frogs at the bottom of a well. So many 100-year-old ginsengs and Ganoderma, Grandmaster Ling must have controlled an ancient herb garden. It can't be an ancient herb garden either. This place is filled with 100-year-old medicinal herbs. That's true. About 100 years ago, there was a faction that planted a large amount of ginseng and Ganoderma, but they were destroyed for some reason. However, the herb garden was not destroyed. Instead, it grew well and was discovered by Master Ling in the end. Everyone sighed. This was really luck. Moreover, with the title of an Earth-grade alchemist supporting him, who would be willing to fall out with Ling Han just for a bit of 100-year-old ginseng and Lingji? Ling Han could earn as much as he wanted without worrying about being targeted. After all, compared to large factions, this was indeed only a small amount of money. Zhu Wujiu was in charge of collecting money, while Ling Han chatted with everyone and inquired about the North region situation. After all, what was written in the books was at least a dozen years ago, or even a few decades ago. The general situation of the North region had not changed. The strongest were still 5 factions, also known as One Valley and 4 sects: Blood Flame Valley, Winter Moon Sect, Sun Luo Sect, Beast Emperor Sect, and Half Moon Sect. Blood Flame Valley was the only faction that did not have a sect in its name, but their strength was considered number 1 in the North region. It was said that they could possibly produce a super elite of the deity transformation tier and truly sweep through the North region. Although there were 4 regions and 1 state in the vast lands, it was not easy to interact normally. Each region was separated by a natural chasm, which was said to be left behind from the ancient war. The higher one's strength was, the harder it was to cross. Precisely because of this, although the North region only had spiritual infant tier elites to keep watch, there was no need to worry about the other 4 regions invading. Speaking of geniuses of the younger generation, Blood Flame Valley's Zhuyu is only 23 years old, but he's already advanced into the spiritual pedestal tier, Su Wentong said, his face full of envy. He could be ranked at the top of the younger generation of the Heaven Origin sect, but now he was only in the fourth layer of the spiritual ocean tier, far from the peak of the spiritual ocean tier, not to mention that the step from the spiritual ocean tier to the spiritual pedestal tier was extremely difficult. The higher the tier of martial art, the more difficult it was to cross a major tier. There was once a genius who stepped into the flower blossom tier at the age of 32, becoming the youngest flower blossom tier warrior in history, but he spent 122 years to go from the flower blossom tier to the spiritual infant tier, and finally died of old age in the spiritual infant tier, not even breaking through to the deity transformation tier, which made people sigh. Even more abnormal than me, Gu Fenghua mumbled on the side. Zhuyu Ling Han mumbled, remembering this name. A 23-year-old spiritual pedestal tier warrior was indeed shocking, and according to what he knew, even Sword Emperor and Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden shouldn't have been so awesome. Presumably, it was because the environment had changed, making cultivation much easier for people now. The Beast Emperor sect also has a freak called Lu Yang, 24 years old, and also advanced into the spiritual pedestal tier. Moreover, the Beast Emperor sect raises demonic beasts as beast pets, and if one man and one beast work together, their battle prowess would increase by a notch. Lin Xiangqin also mentioned a genius. The Limitless sect doesn't have any particularly dazzling new stars, but they have a triplet combination. Although they're all in the 9th layer of the spiritual ocean tier now, the three of them can kill an early-stage spiritual pedestal tier warrior together, so they can't be underestimated, Qi Hualan said. The young prodigy of the Half-Moon sect is a girl, and I heard she's as beautiful as a flower. Even Zhuyu fell in love with her at first sight, sending her to the sect to propose marriage, but was coldly rejected, Su Wentong said with a smile. I've also heard that she's called Zhu Xian'er. She's only 22 years old, and also advanced into the spiritual pedestal tier, truly shocking. Lin Xiangqin nodded, unable to restrain her envy. They were both women, but why did Zhu Xian'er surpass her by a large margin? Not only that, but her beauty is also extremely shocking. I once saw her lift a corner of her veil to drink water. Although only a little bit of her chin was revealed, it was enough to intoxicate me, and I wanted nothing more than to die for her, someone added, his face completely filled with infatuation. Those who hadn't seen Zhu Xian'er before were all shocked. Being able to make a young prodigy so infatuated, then Zhu Xian'er's charm was too great. Moreover, she didn't even show her face, and only a little bit of her chin could make people so infatuated. Inconceivable. I've also heard that a genius from the middle state came to our place to train, and unexpectedly encountered Zhu Xian'er. He was shocked on the spot, and even ran to the Half-Moon sect to propose, saying he'd bring Zhu Xian'er to the middle state. Guess, which sect in the middle state is that genius from? Someone else said, appearing to be showing off. Without waiting for everyone to guess, he directly revealed the mystery, and said, Heaven's Sword sect. Chapter 318. Heaven's Sword Sect. These three words seem to have magical power, making all the young men and women here feel deep veneration, revealing endless yearning. Close to 10,000 years ago, a great calamity occurred in the vast lands. It was Heaven's Sword Sect, Absolute Saber Sect, Cloud Phoenix Sect, and several other super forces that led their seniors into a bloody battle, finally quelling the calamity and achieving the present 10,000 years of peace. Moreover, Heaven's Sword Sect has a shattering void tier elite overseeing it, practically a living monument of martial art. If it were me, needless to say, I'd immediately run over. Ha, cut off your lower part, and do a good makeover on your face, you'll have a chance. Get lost. Everyone laughed loudly, but they had an indescribable yearning towards Heaven's Sword Sect. This was a true holy land of martial art, with an immortal inheritance. Perhaps one day, a supreme being that could break through the void and enter the realm of gods would appear. What happened in the end? Did Zhu Xian'er go to the middle state? Lu Yutong was curious, and couldn't help but ask. No, the person who heard the gossip said. I heard that Zhu Xian'er is extremely filial. Her master went mad when he was cultivating a few years ago, so she made a great vow that she would definitely help her master recover. Whoever was able to do it, she would give that person any amount of cultivation resources, and would even be willing to marry that person to a lower status. However, according to a genius doctor, to cure such a Dao wound, only a heaven-grade medicinal pill can do it, so, our fairy still has to go to the middle state in the end, who knows which bastard will benefit from it. When he said the last sentence, he was already gritting his teeth, as if he'd already seen the goddess of his dreams being embraced by some stinky man, and that was heart-wrenching. Shua, all of a sudden, everyone's eyes were fixed on Ling Han. Why are you guys doing this to me? Ling Han asked innocently. If there's anyone in the North region that can become a heaven-grade alchemist, it's definitely you. Gu Fenghua laughed loudly. You're so abnormal, becoming a heaven-grade alchemist is just around the corner, and you'll be able to hug a beauty at that time. Let me discuss something with you. Can you give me a pair of Fairy Zhu's underwear? Peng, 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 peng. Without waiting for Ling Han to open his mouth, this pervert had already been beaten to a pulp by over a dozen people who admired Zhu Xian'er, and in an instant, he was beaten so badly that he no longer looked human. Yeah, that's Fairy Zhu we're talking about. Lu Yutong was extremely intoxicated. Li Si-chan was the same. Only Hu Niu did not mind at all, and thought, Ling Han is Niu's, a bunch of silly girls. Ling Han only smiled faintly. In his last life, what kind of beautiful woman had he not seen? The heavenly phoenix divine maiden was even said to be the most beautiful woman of all time. It wasn't that he had not been moved. However, when she had asked him to concoct alchemical pills for her, he had asked the heavenly phoenix divine maiden to tell him her real name. He didn't know what was wrong with this woman. When he asked her for a name, it was as if he wanted to kill her. Later on, she would come knocking on his door every 2 to 3 days and take the pills without saying anything. It was as if she was the owner. If he wanted to stop her and fight with her, he would be looking for trouble. Ling Han wanted to break through to the shattering void tears so much because he had enough of the heavenly phoenix divine maiden's bullying and wanted to turn the tables and become the owner. The result was, not long after, he was tormented and killed by the Black Tower. If the heavenly phoenix divine maiden had entered into the realm of immortals, she would probably still be so beautiful that it would make one's heart flutter, right? Suddenly, he somewhat missed the heavenly phoenix divine maiden, the sword emperor, and the setting sun saber emperor. Had these guys died long ago, or had they broken into the realm of immortals? Logically speaking, it was possible that Jiang Yufeng had entered into the realm of immortals, so these guys should have even less of a problem, right? Are you so engrossed in your thoughts? Lu Yutong was jealous, and could not help but pinch Ling Han's waist. However, she saw that Li Si-chan also very tacitly pinched the other side of Ling Han's waist, and could not help but laugh out loud. However, Ling Han said, then what about the Winter Moon sect? What kind of astonishing genius does they have? If it's the Winter Moon sect, the 7 sons of the Ao family should be the strongest, Lin Xiangqin said after some thought. Ao Feng's 7th son? Ling Han asked. No, Ao Feng has 7 sons, and they're all geniuses, collectively known as the 7 sons of the Ao family, Su Wentong explained. These 7 are all at the peak stage of the spiritual ocean tier, and any one of them could step into the spiritual pedestal tier at any time. The dragon gave birth to 9 sons, and as expected, they were all different. Ao Yangming was only in the poly tier, but his brothers were about to reach the spiritual pedestal tier. Perhaps a few were even more disdainful, and were still in the body refining tier. Ling Han rubbed his chin, and said, who are these 7 people? Gu Fenghua shook his head, and said, Ao Feng has too many illegitimate children, who can remember who they are. Those 7 are the most promising, and are respectively called Ao Da, Ao Er, Ao-san, all the way up to Ao-chi. This Ling Han also felt like breaking out in a cold sweat. There were too many, and outsiders couldn't even remember their names. Crippling these 7 people, Ao Feng would probably be heartbroken, right? When he thought of the pain that Ling Dongxing had suffered, Ling Han could not help but grit his teeth in hatred. Ao Feng had to be the last one to be killed, so that he would have a taste of that heart-wrenching pain before he died. Very smoothly, he sold large amounts of 100-year-old ginseng and Ganoderma, earning him almost 400,000 origin crystals. With so many people in the 9 nations of the desolate north, they only spent a few 100,000 origin crystals, but there were only a dozen or so people here, yet they bought almost 400,000 origin crystals. It could be seen how rich the people of the north region were. Comparing oneself to others was infuriating. Everyone chatted for a bit, and naturally left one after another. Ling Han also went to the Star Brilliance Pavilion to return the origin crystals he owed Long Yongzhang and the others. He originally thought that if he didn't have enough money, he could use the 7 turns break crisis pill to make up for it, but he didn't think that the people of the North region would be so helpful. After Cheng Fei Jun disappeared for 2 days, he finally attracted the attention of the Star Brilliance Palace Hall. They sent people to search for this young master, but how could they possibly find him? At first, there were people who suspected that it had something to do with Ling Han, but it was soon clear that Cheng Fei Jun was called over by Luo Jifeng's attendant. But now, not only was Cheng Fei Jun missing, even Luo Jifeng and his attendant were missing, so it naturally had nothing to do with Ling Han. Ling Han decided to add fuel to the fire and spread the news that Luo Jifeng was a disciple of the Thousand Corpse sect, making the vast lands wary of this evil sect. The Thousand Corpse sect could even do something like destroying the desolate north, so it was not impossible for them to destroy the north region, or even the entire vast lands. He had Guang Yuan, Zhu Wujiu, and the others spread the news. As long as they casually mentioned it in places like teahouses and restaurants, this kind of gossip would quickly spread throughout the world as if it had wings. As expected, it had only been a few days, and the news of the Thousand Corpse sect had spread everywhere in the small town. How terrifying this force was, wanting to turn the entire vast lands into a land of corpses. In the process of spreading, the news would definitely be processed, so the more the Thousand Corpse sect spread, the more evil it became. It was practically complete. Ling Han, however, felt that this was very good. The Thousand Corpse sect indeed needed to be more vigilant. This force was too evil. Chapter 319. As far as Ling Han was concerned, there was nothing more important than obtaining the crimson-red chilling ice grass on this journey. For this stock of spirit medicine, he was even willing to exchange the heavenly luck stone and the primal chaos source stone. He endured immense pain, yet acted as if he did not feel it. The body of rock cliff could cut off the feeling of pain, and the indestructible heaven's scroll could fully protect his life force. Added with the protection of the thunder battle armor, he was qualified to continue advancing. The Rain Emperor and Yao Huiyu both looked shocked. In terms of pure defense alone, Ling Han was already above them. But in battle, defense was dynamic, because a powerful attack was also a form of defense. Forcing the opponent to be unable to attack, then even if one's own defense was slightly weaker, what did it matter? What they were shocked about was the battle armor on Ling Han's body. It was too shocking, actually being able to increase the static defense close to the peak stage of the flower blossom tier, protecting Ling Han in all aspects. But for some unknown reason, they kept feeling that this battle armor seemed to have some flaws. This was because a hole had been blasted through the thunder battle armor, and that was why there was a faint feeling of disharmony. It was fine at lower cultivation levels, but the higher one's cultivation level was, the more this flaw would be magnified. After all, it was not a perfect and flawless level 10 spirit tool. Meanwhile, Zhu Xian'er's beautiful eyes lit up. She hoped very much that Ling Han would be able to successfully pluck it. As long as he could pluck it, there would be room for negotiation. Ling Han did not care what others thought. He simply strode forward, wanting to make use of this chance to pluck the crimson-red chilling ice grass as much as possible. Otherwise, he could only wait until he had advanced into the spiritual pedestal tier before using the power boost from the Black Tower again. However, he still wanted to suppress his cultivation level and completely perfect this tier later on. He did not plan to break through quickly, so if he could make use of this chance to obtain the crimson-red chilling ice grass, that would naturally be the best. Moreover, this kind of test was also an opportunity for him. 4 meters, 3 meters, 2 meters, 1 meter of spirit grass was within his reach, but Ling Han revealed an expression of pain. The might of this flame was too terrifying. Even if he had cut off his sense of pain, he still could not avoid it completely because his divine sense also felt as if it was on fire, making him feel extremely uncomfortable. He had to, as soon as possible. Ling Han took another step forward, and finally arrived by the side of the spirit grass. However, he did not pluck the grass, but instead drew out the demon birth sword, intending to dig out this spirit grass. As long as it could be stored into the Black Tower alive, then no matter what kind of environment it needed, it could grow in the Black Tower. Moreover, it could grow even better, and one day could be equivalent to 3 years. This was a level 7 spirit grass, so Ling Han naturally did not plan to only use it once. Chong, the sword struck the white stone below, and instantly, innumerable sparks flew, leaving behind a shallow mark. However, the tip of the sword condensed into a layer of white frost, and a chill rapidly spread from the blade of the sword, causing Ling Han to shiver. It was as if all the blood in his body was about to freeze. He planned to slice this rock in half and store it in the Black Tower together. The tip of the sword naturally extended into the cold ground, attracting the invasion of cold air. And the strange thing was that even though the other half of the sword was in the fiery ground, it did not cancel out the cold air, but rather coexisted very harmoniously.